Boys, welcome back. We're back in Boronia, man. Feels good to be home, baby. Who do I have to my left?
Lord Mahazi.
To my slight right.
CFO GD.
To his right.
Number 10.
And we are joined by the Don today of Australian football journalism. Give it up for Vince Rugari!
Vincenzo!
The Stephen Bradbury.
The Stephen Bradbury.
I entered the game and everyone else left. And sometimes that's what it takes.
Is that actually what happened?
Kind of, man. Like, who else is there? Aside from, like, a couple, Joey Lynch.
Joey Lynch, yep.
Hustles hard.
Yep.
Mad respect for him.
Joey Lynch was the guy in the press conference.
Yeah.
Well, you were there.
Yeah, Joey Lynch was...
Yeah,
yeah,
he's an artist, man.
As far as people who do, like, mostly football, yeah, you're looking at it, man, which is different to when I started, you know, which is really not that long ago, when I'd go in press box rooms and that, and, like, you know, Ray Gatt, Tom Smithies, Dave Davutovic, Matt Winley, Val Miliacho, every News Corp paper in every city had a dude. And usually they'd been around for a while. I looked up to them all, you know?
Yep.
And then I got there and it must have been something I said, I don't know, because they all left pretty quickly.
That's actually... Do you know what? All those names he said, I don't know if you guys would know, they are major, major names, bro.
Well, man, back when, no doubt we're going to talk a lot of Gold Coast here, but like back then, you know, they had Dave Lewis, who was at the Gold Coast Bulletin. So the Gold Coast Bulletin had a football person. Marco Monteverde was at the Courier Mail. Like every place had a dedicated, sometimes two people on football.
And now you cover the whole world by yourself.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, look, I don't do as much like A-League coverage, nitty-gritty games and all that as much as I'd like to for, you know, reasons.
Yeah.
But I try my best. But like, yeah.
From your assessment, what do you think is the reason for why people have moved out of football?
I think they're all older, weren't they?
Well, I
they're
think
like retired, kind of.
The main thing is that Foxtel lost the rights. And so all the papers that were owned by News Corp decided to reduce their football coverage. And so a lot of those guys either got made redundant or moved on because the job just wasn't there. When News Corp had the rights, it was in their interests to have as much stuff in the papers for the A-League as possible and, you know, all the other football. But once they lost that imperative, they were like...
Right.
all over. So, I mean, that's the broad summary of it, yeah. It sucks.
So how did it all start for you then? Like, when did you decide you want to work in this realm?
Yeah. Can I just say first, like, thanks for having me on, boys. Like, a pleasure.
No,
I feel honoured. It's a great podcast. You're doing great work. I told Jake, you should all know as well. Like,
Thank you, brother.
Amazing job
Thanks,
you're doing.
Man.
Filling a great hole in Australian football. But just like, as I was saying to Jake before as well, like, this is media now. So, to an extent, you know, in terms of long form, just sit down and chat with people, get to know them. So, like,
before we do that, I'm going to be a pain in the ass. Can you move your mic slightly closer? I've just got the message from the producer backstage.
What about that?
Yeah, that should be good.
Oh, no, just swung. No, fuck.
Yeah, that should be better. As long as you can talk directly into the top of it.
The top?
Yeah, well, just maneuver it however you want, really. Yeah.
Is this good?
But maybe while you do that, but even on your side, Vinny, I feel like it's very hard to be a journalist in the game of football and have a really strong integrity and have a really good relationship with a lot of people. And I feel
Depends who you ask.
well, I don't know. From my end, I feel like you're a liked person.
Oh,
like
I hope so, man.
Yeah, I
Thanks.
think you are, and you've kind of gone. So I feel like you kind of correlate with us really well because you have a.
I just do, like, what's the saying? Like, no one else can be you, so you may as well. That area is. It's.
What was the saying?
Nah, yeah.
I think it's you
What
do
about the LeBron? That's my favorite saying.
Yeah.
That's my favorite saying.
That's my favorite saying.
But it's true, and it takes you a while, I guess, in anything to understand that a little bit more and figure out, you know.
Yeah.
Just be yourself. That's all I've tried to be, really.
You're the exact same guy. I mean, I haven't read every article you've written. Go figure, because it's been 10 years. But you're the same person that was turning up to Gold Coast trainings, which I can't wait till we go into, because obviously we'll get into your journey, how you started. But bro, you got to think where he started out his career at, of like writing on football. Was at probably the biggest basket case of a football club in the country.
I think maybe that's why he was there. because there was a story every week.
Well, good grounding for Australian football, to be honest, because it's chaos everywhere, and that was it. Huh?
For people that don't know, can you give us a summary of what you're currently doing exactly right now?
Oh, so I'm the football guy / but I do some other sports at the Sydney Morning Herald. Been there for 6 years, and I do some other little things on the side as well. But that's the main. That's me. That's my gig. Love it.
Right, let's go back to the start. Maybe, I don't know, coming out of uni or whatever. When did you decide, like, all right, this is what I want to do? And, like, what was the turning point where you thought, fuck, I love this shit?
So, so I'm from Adelaide originally.
Yep.
Grew up there, but went to uni on the Gold Coast at Bond University because I got a half scholarship there, basically, and I wanted to leave Adelaide. So I started doing, I wasn't sure what I wanted to be, really. All I knew was I was a good writer.
How do you know you're a good writer?
I don't know, just through doing assignments at school over the years and just like, I don't know.
Did you enjoy it? Like actually writing?
Yeah, I guess so.
Because for some people, like getting on a computer and typing stuff is like a task.
Yeah, I guess I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at some point, I guess probably in year 12, like I figured out, I want to be a journo or whatever. And then I did a double degree in journalism and sports management because I always loved sports and I thought, who knows? But after one semester of that at uni, there was a subject called writing for news media where you had to talk to people on campus. It was like for the campus newsletter.
Yep.
Just talk to people cold, find stories and all that. And I just hated it because I was 17 when I started uni. Like I was just so young and I had no idea. I just hated like talking to people just like out of nowhere, like cold calling and that. So I changed my degree to communication because I figured I don't want to be that guy who's holding a microphone under an athlete's nose and being all like that. What I'd like to do is similar, but on the other side of the fence, like help a team, be a part of the team and all that. So I changed my degree to communication, majoring in journalism and PR.
Can you explain what the three? Because I don't know what's communication. What's
it's just like
communication?
It's a buzzword.
a umbrella term for media-ish kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Really.
Okay.
Yeah, me and Vince are the same, except I did 1 day of that and I quit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I bailed on it, and funnily enough, it ends up being what I do anyway. But
What happened in the 1 day for you to quit it?
Sorry to cut Vince's story short here, but long story short, I was at Cedar and I thought I was too smart for everyone, so I quit. And I decided to enroll in a sports media program. It was the first of its kind at Holmes Glen.
That's the first problem.
But it was it was a bachelor, so it wasn't like a TAFE course. They just happened to host it at the TAFE. And I went on the first day and Cameron Ling was there and he was talking all this shit. And then at the end of it, I asked my main lecturer or whatever the fuck he was, I asked him for help on something and he goes, mate, I don't know, this is not high school, don't ask me. And I said, yeah, I'm quitting.
That was it for you.
Yeah.
That was enough.
Yeah.
You definitely made the right decision then to get out of it. If that was the
Also, they wanted us to do 9 p.m. classes in St Kilda on a Monday night. I said, go get fucked. I'll just start my own pod.
Okay. Sorry, Vince.
sorry, Vinny.
Let's move over to a professional.
Hey, respect
Someone
me.
who finished the course.
someone who honoured the degree.
where was I?
So you're talking about communications umbrella.
So funnily enough, it was through the sports management side of the degree that I actually ended up doing this because this was around the time when Gold Coast United had been announced that they were coming into the A-League. And one of the subjects was done in concert with the club as they were starting up and trying to figure out what they were going to do and all that. And one of the assignments I remember was the Socceroos were playing a game in Brisbane, but they had a training session at Skilled Park, as it was called back then. And like you had to get it was so popular, you had to get a ticket to actually attend the training and watch it. And our job was to be on the outside with clipboards and like surveying people about, I can't remember what it was, but it was all like questions that would help the club figure out how they're going to attract fans and all that. And from that, I got to know people at the club better. And there was another subject I had to do for sports management, which was like a internship, I guess. That's what the subject was. And I got to do the internship with the club. So I was like basically the the number 2 person in the media department, along with a guy called Neil Favager, who was my boss.
Neil
Legend.
Favager.
Yeah, legend.
Shout out.
So- Sorry, the club was Gold Coast.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
So,
Is Neil Favager still around?
he's still around,
Oh,
but
okay.
I don't think he's involved in football.
Shout out Neil
anymore.
Favager. Yeah, I remember
legend.
him. Yeah.
So my job initially through that internship was to basically, I was in charge of because the NYL was on back then when they actually had a legit
Oh, yeah.
NYL that wasn't
was
8
mad.
rounds. It was like long,
Yeah.
and it was actually really good
It was
competition.
a good league, man.
very
I've been
good.
saying that for ages. Yeah.
And how about the team, man?
Yeah,
so
but
even
Gold
before
Coast-
you got there,
yeah,
there was,
they'd won it back to back.
Steve Lustica, Chris Harrell, Ben Halloran, Zach Anderson, Golgol Mabratu,
James Brown, Taj Minikon.
Yeah, man.
Taj Minikon.
Like, that's a sick team.
Yeah.
Like,
Plus,
in
they
and
get
of
us-
itself.
Then they get some senior players dropping in.
Yeah,
You know?
So I had to do all the NYL games, do a match report and talk to the coach Mike Mulvey and the players and do stories for the website.
So would you travel? Because that time they were travelling interstate.
Yeah. I'd only do the games that were on the Gold Coast, but part of the job was to do match reports for the games that were elsewhere. And Fav gave me some tools, like a list of questions, which was very helpful for the work I did afterwards, working in the country and all that for newspapers. What questions to ask so that you've got enough information to write about a game that you've never seen. So say, I would work for in Griffith, New South
That's
Wales.
what these boys do when we talk about the Prem.
Yeah.
So in Griffith, for instance, my first real job was I'd have to ring in the summer particularly and talk to the captains of the local cricket teams about what happened. I didn't watch the game, so I've got to be able to ask you, give the right questions to get the enough information to actually put something together combined with the scoreboard. Anyway.
Can you give us a few questions like what?
I
they
can't
would give
remember,
you?
man.
Can't?
It's been a long time. I might have them on my email somewhere. I will dig it up because.
But what's an
See-
example of the sentiment behind the questions?
Oh,
'Cause I can't even
can you
imagine.
describe how the goal happened? What were the conditions like?
Ah,
you know,
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
What did how did that change? How was the game being played initially? Was it a slow start? Was it a fast start? Conditions, this and that, and eventually a
Yeah,
picture
wow.
gets painted
Oh,
of all that. Yeah.
Nice.
I didn't know what I was doing while I was doing it. Anyway, so I did the internship, and one of my mates at the time, a guy named Mark Pangallo, who now works in Adelaide, I think for the Adelaide 36ers, was working for a website which is no longer around called Sportal. Sportal.com.au.
Sportal.
Sportal is now the Perform Group or whatever. So
Okay,
it got bought and the website got closed down and all that. But Sportal back then was basically just a website and they would do all the sport. So they'd have a person in each city, and if you're there, you go to. So the job with Sportal involved Brisbane Lions, Gold Coast Suns as they were starting up, Queensland Reds rugby, and the A-League stuff that was going on, all that. Bit of NRL as well. I think, can't remember if he was either moving to London or moving to the Gold Coast Bulletin, but that job was being vacated, and we'd sit together with Fav at Owen Park in Southport for all these NYL games. And he was leaving, and he's like, "Why don't you do this?" And I'm like, man, I don't want to be a journo. It's not what I'm after. And Fav is sitting there next to me, and I'm pretty sure he said, mate, you should do it. You better do it. This is a great
was
opportunity.
that the Gold Coast media manager?
Yeah.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
God. All right.
Yeah.
So he's.
So he's like, it's a bit
So
like
you're,
it's your
how are you?
student if
Were you
don't do it.
working within the club at first,
At that
and then when
time.
I've come, then you've gone out into the bulletin?
Correct. Cut the
Oh.
bulletin for sport.
Okay, so I didn't know that.
So that's how it works. So then, I think it was for the third season at Gold Coast.
Yeah.
Was basically when I was doing this job properly for Sportal, and I'd have to go. I was living on the Gold Coast with my girlfriend at the time, and I'd go up to cover the Test match cricket in Brisbane, and come back to do this and that, and go do all the Gold Coast games. And that's kind of, and then I was just doing that for a while. I turned out to be all right at it.
Yeah.
And the more I read about what other people were doing and other journos, it was you measure up. And so I kind of I never wanted to do it, but I fell into it.
Crazy.
And then after that, fast forwarding all the Gold Coast stuff, I broke up with my girlfriend at the time. I had to find a place to live. And I'd finished uni, but I was still hanging out with people at uni because they were my mates and all that sort of stuff. I was just trying to figure out what am I going to do? Do I move back to Adelaide or whatever? So I applied for jobs, and I got a job in Griffith. And then from there, there's another story, but the answer to how did I end up doing this is by accident.
I feel like
A lot of people's lives are like that.
yeah, it is. A lot of it is.
And it turns out better than what you actually expected.
Yeah.
And I never thought I was up to it. I didn't think it suited my personality.
But on that though, like I don't know, did you experience, like, even in your time, like any journos that the whole team liked? Like, he was kind of like, if he asked anyone for a chat, everyone would be like, yeah. Like, you would even chat to the boys after, like, the media thing, just like, what's going on, man?
I feel like journos in football or in sports in general are quite hated.
Yeah, it's a bit weird like that. I don't know. I just try to be a normal person.
But you know what?
be fair.
You have found a nice space for yourself, like Jake was saying, where you actually say a lot of controversial stuff, and you call out a lot of the stuff that's going on behind closed doors. But it seems like everyone still likes you.
What was that?
Which is great. I don't know
What was
the
it? What
reason
you
that is,
said
but-
about Vinny?
I think
Was it
that's
yesterday?
Also, the complete honesty.
Oh, I said, yeah. So yesterday I was saying to these boys, because maybe when I was playing, I can't remember what you were doing at that time, but I don't think we ever interacted or crossed
No,
paths.
you were at like Victory and Wanderers, right?
Yeah.
And by that time I was working for, I think, AAP in Brisbane. So I was doing a lot of
Okay.
Brisbane Roar type stuff.
Right.
And not having much contact time with basically anyone else in football. I was up
okay.
there, you know what I mean?
Right. But I was saying, because now I'm doing these little like segments where I do a bit of research and we do a clip on it and stuff. And pretty much all my information comes from articles that you've written. Like, every time I get to the bottom, it's like Vince Rugari.
Yeah, he
Like,
reckons he's searching for all these topics, and he's like, man, Vinny's written an article on fucking everything.
Well, that must have been when the Bradbury stuff started, because like there was no one else doing it, so it had to be me. I don't know.
But you're getting, like, can I ask just, like, in regards to where are you getting a lot of your deep knowledge from? Like, even the thing you mentioned to me in the car, which I don't know if you want to bring that up, around the A-League and the young players, but, like, where are you getting your data points? Because
Just being a fan, to be honest. Like, the good thing about, and I'm sure you guys can relate to it in different ways, doing something that you love is, like, easy. Because, I'll be honest, up here, there's not much else going on aside from thinking about football and what's my next meal going to be, basically. Do you know what I mean?
Fucking sound like me.
Yeah. Well, but seriously, it's like, so by accident, I'm doing research.
Yeah, you're
for my
very
job.
interested. Yeah, you're very interested.
Like, I would be that interested anyway.
In that, is that why you just might be like just kicking it and you're just on your phone looking at football?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, a big thing for me, I have to say, is, and didn't intend for it to be like this at all, is Twitter, because like I just got on there and started posting and whatever, and then I got a job, and it's like, oh, I suppose it's handy that I'm doing this, and then you put your articles there and people react, and you think based on how people react as well. It makes you think.
Well,
You see how people talk, and then sometimes players will follow you, and some players will end up DMing you and be like, hey man, that's spot on. By the way, this is happening too. And then other people would know me because of Twitter, and they'd tell me things.
This
and
is
it's
what's
like,
happening to me now. I'm getting messages from people online saying, hey, have you seen this article? Have you seen this
Yeah.
article?
And it's like,
It just
it's
comes
like
out.
building on itself, sort
You're
of thing.
building relationships, but also helping yourself out.
Yeah, but like totally by accident. I didn't start tweeting in a particular way to do that. I just the whole time I've just tried to be normal and like what I.
But
would,
that's what I think that's a win in itself.
I guess so. By accident.
Yeah,
though,
by accident.
You know?
Yeah.
I think before I even did this podcast, before I even wanted to, dabble in this realm, I followed Vince, and you're the guy. Like, whether you want to admit it or not, you're the guy on Australian football Twitter. Like, everyone looks to you for stuff.
Really?
Yeah,
Damn,
he
you've
is.
come a long way,
is.
bro.
It's so cooked sometimes as well because I forget it.
You do know you got like 25,000 followers on
Yeah,
Twitter. Like, you know,
yeah.
you're the guy when it comes to. There's a few others.
Wait, why would he not know that?
Well, I
do you
forget it sometimes because sometimes I'm just a person with a social media
Yeah, he's
account
just tweeting.
who wants to
like-
say something stupid, and then the way some people will react and retweet it will be like, "Ooh," and I'm a bit like,
Right.
"Oh, I probably shouldn't have done that."
But
or
like,
whatever.
what-
I need a burner, to be honest. Like, I don't have one. I need a burner.
Yeah, I know Vinny Rugari's got a burner
I don't
somewhere.
have a burner, bro.
Damn.
Hey,
Bro,
is your following 25,000 on Twitter? Is
Something like that.
Something like that.
But like,
Damn,
I'm
that's
massive on
a
Twitter.
big
lot.
on Twitter, right?
really big.
I think there's some fakies in there. I didn't buy them, but sometimes you just get. You see the accounts that follow you, and half of them are like, "That's not a person. that's
a Russian
numbers."
sex bot.
Yeah, like that's not whatever.
Hey, can I ask you? Did you have a passion for football before you started doing the journalism stuff?
Yeah, big time. I never played it, but like I don't know, growing up as a wog in Adelaide, you can't. And my dad, I only found this out recently. Actually, my dad is a big AFL and cricket guy, and the reason is when they moved to the part of Adelaide that they did from Italy, the school they all went to didn't have soccer.
Yeah.
It was not on offer. And so to play sport, to make friends, you got to play what the locals play. And that's what they did.
That's my mum's side. My mum's side's
Yeah.
Italian. Same thing. None of them like soccer or football. They're all AFL diehards purely because that was the way to fit in.
The same as what Johnny A said.
Not only the way to fit in, but no choice. Then also, my nonni weren't big football people in Italy.
Yeah.
Like, nonno liked it, but it's not like he went to all the games for Regina, which was the club he came from.
Yep.
Like the area he came from.
Yeah.
So it's not like they came over to Australia with like a big, strong football heritage within the family.
Yeah.
I picked it up, from going with my uncle. My uncle Vince is like the stray one who did like football in my dad's side of the family.
There's always an uncle.
And my two little cousins played juniors for Adelaide City. So I'd often go to like Adelaide City games before the A-League started, obviously, with them. And I'd go watch them play on the weekends sometimes and all that. But it wasn't really until because also being a young wog as well, you go through periods where it's like, am I Italian or am I Australian? And you sway from one to the other. And so there was a period there where like, okay, Adelaide City, but like I didn't go to the same school as a lot of my family. I went to a different school in Adelaide where there weren't many Italians or whatever. Yeah. Unlike St Michael's in Adelaide, which is where my cousins went. That's just full wog. But like, so I'm trying to sort of figure out who I am at this school, and going to watch Adelaide City doesn't fit in with that so much. Not that I'm ashamed of it, but it's just not what I played basketball. You know what I mean? I was with a different crowd.
That's crazy how you say that about schools. Like me at primary school, it was all soccer.
But
Then when I went to high school, I hated my hie school because I couldn't relate to anyone.
Well, you did go there for 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why.
At my school, the wogs played soccer, and not that I didn't want to be a wog.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be just I don't know, a normal person. I didn't want to be just hanging out with the wogs.
Yeah.
I did hang out with the wogs, but I didn't only want to.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I went to the exact same.
What a statement.
I think I went to the exact
I wanted
same.
to hang out with everyone.
Oh, yeah, I
lot
did. I was a bit
people
of a
would relate
floater.
to this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I was at that crossroads as well, where it's
Yeah.
like, do I keep going with AFL or do I like make the switch? Or like I was playing basketball as well. Like, where do I sort of fit in? Like, I'm a wog, but I don't look like one. I look like I'm fucking South Asian or some shit.
But I guess it's so strange that even
I don't know about that, South Asian.
Do you know how many times I got Indian, Pakistani?
Yeah, I can see a little.
I mean, not really.
Well, I was darker when I was a kid. Trust me.
is
Anyway.
being that tall normal.
Anyway,
need
let's
to know
go
what
back
you
to Twitter because I really am intrigued with your Twitter influence.
Me too. I still don't. Yeah, it's funny. It's just funny.
You are like a really interesting blend of journalistic integrity and being yourself, which I feel like is it's a tricky road to navigate sometimes.
Yeah.
Very tough.
I see you all the time. Well, not necessarily you, but I see people adding you all the fucking time.
Yeah.
And we'll get into it later about the Ange stuff because that's where they that's where they at you at. It's all the Ange stuff.
Oh, it must be hot at the minute.
But
Yeah, but we'll see.
Sorry, before you move on, can you explain to me what you mean by journalistic integrity?
okay, so Vince will, come with facts. He'll come with well thought out articles and opinions on things, but then also he's got to balance. He's a personality on Twitter, so like he'll joke around. He's got you've got your funny little things that you do on Twitter, which I guess is what Twitter's for, sort of. But in that, what would you say the most controversial or sort of polarizing article that you wrote that you just copped it on Twitter? Is there one in particular?
Nothing comes to mind, to be honest.
Right.
It's more just probably any time I write about the second division and don't say that it's amazing and going to happen and it's all sweet.
So you cop it for that.
Do you stand by that? Like, do you not think the second division, they open the gates, even if it's in 10 years, 20 years, do you not think that ever happens?
Oh, I'd love for it to happen, but I
do you
just think
think
financially, just the way it actually works is really tough to figure out. Like, I want that bad more than anyone else.
Well, the only reason
As
why,
much as anyone else,
correct,
I should
correct
say.
me if I'm wrong here. The only reason why it's happening is because the clubs are paying for it.
In
right?
terms of this one that's happening now?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Like they're not being funded. They've had to go
Man,
and
the
find
reality
money.
is there's no money in the game.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's just not enough money in the game to do
100%.
all the stuff we want to do, that we should do, that we'd all love to do. And it kills me as much as it does for anyone in NPL land who wants it to happen because their club's shut out or whatever. But I just looking at the way it's set up and the reality we live in as opposed to the one we want to live in, it's really hard to see it happening the way that people want it to happen, which means like up and down straight like Europe.
Yeah.
Like that's almost impossible in this country given how expensive it is to travel anywhere and how little money is in the game. So as a broad answer to your question, I would say anytime I point any of that stuff out, that's when I cop heat. But also I don't really see it as much anymore because I just like mute and block and like life's good. to
Your
be
block
honest.
list must be crazy.
Can I
just really
piggyback? Can I piggyback just on that? Like, in regards to your journalistic view of what's gonna be topical to write on, because there's obviously things that happen that are there, but then there's things that, like, can you speak about what you spoke to me in the car about?
Remind me.
About the A-League, the age gap, the age group, and your sort of optimistic view of the future.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's future thinking, right? So that's not something that may be happening under the covers that you're going to find.
Yeah.
So can you just explain the differences there and like,
I don't know. I don't really. It's not that deep in terms of like.
so you're just fucking naturally good.
Well, no, I just like I can write, but also like I just think like I would imagine a football fan thinks, which is like hectic. There's all these young players who are in the league now, and I saw a stat. I think the A-League might have tweeted about it as well, which is that the A-League is now number 2 in the world or something like that for under 20
It is, yeah.
match minutes as a percentage, behind only the Serbian league, and it's like that's hectic because what that means is more players are going to be exposed. And we can already see with transfers.
Look at the transfer window.
I'm going to write something about this in the next week or two. There's kids, the amount of players who are leaving now is so high. And what's going to happen is it's basically like a numbers game, right? In terms of, say, 100 kids go to Europe.
20 do really well.
Maybe 30 do well,
Yeah.
15 do really well, 5 make it to top 5 leagues.
Yeah.
At the moment, or say in the past, hypothetically let's say we were only sending 30 kids.
Yeah, you
out
cast
there.
a broader net.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's going to have a massive impact for the Socceroos in future because in 5-10 years down the road, whoever the national team coach is going to might not have to reach into the A-League to find players because there's going to be so many over there at so many different levels.
Can I ask though? And there's devil's advocate because I agree with you, but a lot of people are saying, hold on, these players are scoring 3 goals in 15 games and 4 assists, and they're getting European moves.
I think so what though?
That's
Who cares?
fine.
Yeah, go.
That's fine.
Great.
They're the 70 who won't make it. You got to break a few eggs to make an omelette.
And some of them still made. Some of them still made.
I don't think it's a problem. I'm just saying I see a lot of fans saying, hold on, how do you get a move to the Bundesliga 2 or to the Swiss league or whatever?
Yeah.
Or,
You know how?
But that's every country. That's happening in every country now because people are realizing that it's so competitive that they try to grab
probably.
players.
You know how
really
they got
quickly.
those
You got a pre-buy.
And always they have this to come back to.
That's right.
Which is so good.
What'd you say, Vince? Sorry.
You know how they got those moves? It's because clubs overseas, because it's so competitive out there to buy players, are looking for opportunities. They're looking for markets that are undervalued.
Unique markets.
And most of them are dealing with data. And the data will say, hey, there's a player here you should look at. He does this well, does this well. Does that match with what you need? Yep, go. Oh, is he cheap? Yep, boom. It's a free hit.
Yeah.
Like for Real Salt Lake buying Piol, did Piol go too early? Probably.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he won't make it. But for Real Salt Lake, they paid $500,000 US.
Nothing.
They got cash.
Yeah.
That's like roll the dice.
Free hit.
If it works, no worries. And the good thing is for us, hopefully there will be so many players who do that you don't have to stress about if Piol makes it or not because there'll be 10 Piols.
Do you reckon it'll ever get to the point where A-League clubs can get somewhere close to that where we can start taking risks on signings?
Hopefully.
But just the reason why this is happening now is because it's much easier to get a game.
Yeah, because the clubs don't have as much money because the broadcast deal's down.
Yeah. So it's it went from bad to sort of working out.
This is the pro of maybe the league not being as
Yeah, 'cause
crazy strong with the imports
Think
and
back to when
the
you blokes
domestic
were
players.
playing what squads were like and how They were only really 1-2 year contracts. A lot of players recycled between clubs. Not many coaches willing to give youth a punt. It's changed now. And that changed out of necessity because the clubs don't have as much money as they used to, which means they've got to figure out how do we make money from the little money we have. Boom. The answer is play kids, sell them. If you can turn Ariath Piol in 10 games into 800 grand Aussie, what do you mean? Like,
That's fucking crazy.
that means if you do that a few times a year, you'll keep the lights on as a club, no matter what the broadcast deal is. And if you nail it, you might be really well off as a club.
Yeah.
Now, what you do with that money is interesting as well. Do you reinvest that into your youth development and have better players? Do you put some of that into your squad and buy better foreigners so that you've got a better product so you can get more fans coming, so you can get more revenue that way?
Buy fans.
Yeah, all that. But like,
Buy seats.
we've got 13 clubs now, and they'll all answer that question differently.
Yeah.
And again, it's a bit of a numbers game. We've got 13 clubs who are all using the transfer market in this way. Whatever happens, we'll have a decent competition to watch.
When would you say the A-League was the strongest financially? Like when were like teams like, oh yeah, they can spend, like they could, it's you know, they've got it.
I reckon it was like I have a memory of being in Saudi Arabia for a Socceroos game when it came through that they'd signed the biggest Fox Sports broadcast deal.
So what do we maybe
So with that year
2011,
was, I think it was
2012?
2017.
Oh,
Yeah.
further.
What?
Yeah. And they signed a huge broadcast deal, and it was just like every club got something like $3 million each. And that's when I think the league was probably at its strongest on the field in terms of imports. That was when
David Villa and all that or was that a bit before?
that was a bit before, but like I don't know, the FBK's in his prime at Victory.
That's a byproduct of 10 years, though, of good product.
Yeah,
Yeah,
almost.
but from
And
your
also a
assessment,
sweetheart deal with Lowy and the the Foxtel.
but just
Correct.
on that, so how you're saying that there's not enough money in the game right now, right? From your assessment, what is the reason for that? Because if I look at something like AFL, right? Yeah, they've got the attendance is there, but surely revenue is not just attendance. I mean, attendance by fans.
It's mostly broadcast.
It's the TV rights.
and it's a
deal.
similar answer
1
to
billion.
that.
Right,
Because there's
but-
not enough people like us, man.
But what
I wish there was.
But there's 1 point, and I saw a stat yesterday: 1.9 million participants in soccer in Australia. I don't know how many in AFL. I think it's like 700,000 or
How many of
something.
them watch the A-League though?
Yeah,
for most of them,
that's the thing.
taking your kid to junior soccer on the weekends is like taking them to taekwondo, or taking them to dance practice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not a passion sport that they follow. Some of them do, but for most of them, it's just
Keep your kids busy.
a thing you do or something you do with your mates on a weekend because you can't play rugby league or AFL if you're, say, like me, 35-year-old and like not fit sort of thing. Like, what are you going to do? Run into like a bunch of Polynesian guys every weekend? Like, it's not a good time to spend it's not a good use of your body. You know what I mean? So you play over 35 soccer. You know what I mean?
I
So
feel
it's
like also if you asked a lot of parents who's the best player in the A-League, they wouldn't answer you. Where if you follow AFL and you say who's the best player in the AFL, they'll know.
But the TV, I'm pretty sure the TV rights deal for AFL was $1 billion.
yeah, it's a monster.
The
But that
A-League
goes
one's
back
40
to what I
million.
was saying before, which is
So
there's just not
that's-
enough people watching the league, consuming information, articles about the league, going to the games and all that. And if there was, not only would we be able to sort these problems out in the game, but I also think Australia would be like a better place.
So you're in a
Like if we were more into football.
Can you elaborate on
just
that?
imagine, and I love footy, AFL, but imagine if the collective effort, so to speak, that the country puts into that was channeled into football, would be like top 5 in the world, or
Yeah.
close to. You know what I mean?
probably
Yeah.
Like
But-
culturally, if football held that position in all of the states in Australia, man, there'd be people in Africa buying Collingwood jerseys and wearing it like they do Barcelona jerseys. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to live in that world.
Yeah, me
but
too.
we don't.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I want Neymar to be from Australia.
Totally.
Yeah.
You're in a unique position where you cover both sports, and a lot of people and we've done it before, but a lot of people that do cover strictly soccer have like a sour taste in their mouth about AFL, but you cover both. But do you still see that unfairness in whether it be funding or the way AFL fans view soccer? I'm saying soccer to differentiate, so if you want to get in the comments, I'll just fucking block you. Do you know what I'm saying?
You don't run social media. So.
I don't know. The more I sort of learn, the more it's like, I don't know if it's... Definitely they like it when we screw up.
Yeah.
For sure, because but we're not like as strong as we were in terms of being a threat to the AFL. And man, a lot of AFL fans follow Prem anyway. It's not
The AFL content on Prem is every club's doing. They're
I
doing
know.
celebrations. They're doing.
I know. And that's a little bit of a sign of how the culture overall is changing in Australia, because it wasn't like that before then. you
Yeah,
know?
early 2000s, you would
wasn't-
not get the top players doing Premier League celebrations
way.
after they
Nah.
get a goal.
Premier League's moving into a sort of
Premier
NBA
League
space
is-
in terms of it's fashionable to be attached to it.
Yes.
Well, it's even fascinating how you said that your parents at school, like, no one was playing soccer. Even though the majority of this country, or people in this country, have a heritage that's not something that's from a footballing type of a nation, right? And most Europe, like Greek, Italian, any other country that's from like African, anything is like footballing countries normally. So why do you think even at that time football wasn't at school? Like, I'm talking soccer, not
just because
AFL.
Australia was just so, we're talking 60s, 70s here. Australia was just a totally different place where, man, obviously we'll get onto Ange, but like just looking through his life story and some of the stuff when he was young, we're talking in the 70s probably, you'll go on public transport and people will like abuse you for being a wog, like straight up. Like it was around that time or just before or after or whatever that the white Australia policy got dismantled. We were like, Australia was not built to accommodate soccer or the people who played it back then.
Go play fucking wog ball.
Yeah, pretty much. Healers, wogs, and poofters.
Yeah.
The Johnny Warren
Shout
book.
out Johnny Warren, bro.
That's what it was. And it really wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
But even the English
A lot of the
heritage
English, when
people,
they
it's a
came-
footballing country, so I don't understand.
A lot of them, when they came here, talking to some football historians and stuff, or some other stuff that I'm doing, they dropped their support of football when they came here, or what they did was they followed their team from where they're from. Say you're from London, you follow West Ham. They'd be a West Ham fan in Australia, but they wouldn't engage with local football here. Some of them would, but some of them wouldn't because, I don't know, maybe they looked down on it. And also, the other thing was if you're wanting to assimilate, a lot of the English and all that played other sports, played footy, played rugby league, played cricket.
I reckon when you're coming here to try to build a better life for your family, football's gonna take a back seat. Like if you're coming here trying to start a business, trying to keep the family afloat, you can't go to live games anymore if you follow a team in Italy or Greece. It's not gonna be everywhere, especially in the 60s and 70s.
The exception is the people who came here with a strong passion for football already.
Yeah,
Which my nonnal wasn't, but some people's nonnals were.
Yeah.
And therefore, this hypothetical nonnal would say to their kids, well, I don't care that there's no football at your school. We're going to go play. We're going to go sign you up at a local club, and you're going to play.
But sorry to stay and keep reiterating this point, but the interesting thing is, I'm not talking about the Greeks and Italians. I'm talking about, like, let's say the English, because the English come here, and they're a footballing country. They're a soccer country.
When the main majority of English people came here, bro, it was like the 1800s or whatever.
Yeah, it's like when they
they're
built
not-
AFL.
There wasn't a mass migration of Brits in like the 60s or something.
Yeah,
like
and,
it was
and it's
all
interesting when the Brits did come here, and this actually relates to another story which I'll do in the weeks to come about the way Australian crowds are in terms of why we've borrowed so much from British culture. It's always fascinated me. Why don't we sing like them? Like what happened there? So I'm looking into that, and part of it is
How do you look into that?
it's a great question. I've got no idea, but I'm trying. I talked to some academics who specialise in sports culture and history and all that.
I reckon I have an idea, but
Yeah. And what was I going to say? So the answer is basically like when Australia was starting up back then, when most of the British migrants were coming, the idea that they were trying to do, everyone as Australia, is to build an improvement on Britain, not just take what they had, but it was to try and set up a different culture of, okay, that's Britain, but they've got class warfare, they've got this and that, they've got some aspects that we don't want. So here we're starting afresh. We're going to take the good and leave the bad. And also, you'll find that a lot of the countries that started up as British colonies, America, Canada, started up their own games as well. It was part of the country establishing their own identity, which was to not play what Britain played, but was to play our own game and have our own culture that comes from that. So maybe if that changed differently, like in the 1800s, 1890s or whatever, you can imagine an alternate history where everyone was sitting, all these old people were sitting in a room back then. It was like, right, what are we going to play? If they decided then, we'll play football like we do back home.
Yeah.
Then Australia goes on a completely different
Well,
path.
isn't it like, is it Tasmania where they did a vote
great
on
point.
whether they would play rugby or AFL, and AFL won by one vote.
Something like that, yeah.
And so
I think
it's an
Queensland
AFL
had a
state
similar
now, but
thing.
it could have been
Yeah.
a rugby. It could have been a rugby town.
I find all this stuff like really interesting, eh?
Oh, that's a fascinating point that you
because
just brought
because I
up.
just sit around sometimes just being like, man, what happened to this country? Like, why didn't we end up like you just can't escape the thought in my head sometimes. Anyway, it's just like imagine if all we did was football and how good we'd be.
Do you think
there would be? Imagine the broadcast deal that the A-League would get for overseas people wanting to watch our football if we were top 5. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
it would
It's
be
fantasy.
Well, because
but-
it's such a great place to attract players to come.
Yeah.
Like, because we're in a pretty nice place to live. So, like, it's a very attractive
it's full of
product.
daydreaming areas.
Yeah,
but
it's daydreaming.
I'm allowed
like,
to do it.
Like Heskey's. Emil Heskey spoke about it.
yeah.
To be fair, like, if you're playing in England and you're on big dollar, you don't want to be living there.
If
Well,
you had
everyone
the
says the
option
weather.
to play,
That's what I'm saying. That's
if you
what I'm
had the
saying.
option to, if you're a footballer and your options were, do I play in the Premier League or do I
Or do I
play
play in
in
Sydney?
an equivalent league in Australia to the Premier League in
Yeah.
terms of quality and clubs and all that? Hey, you'd go to Australia, wouldn't you?
Exactly, right? If you're playing, let's just say for Arsenal, earning whatever Odegaard's earning, but living in Sydney, you're going to choose that, 100%.
Yeah.
Instead of the fucking sun going down.
But
at 3
then,
PM.
but then, what about
If the league was the same,
No,
and you weren't
yeah.
going backwards with your career
if
to do
we've got a
it.
parallel league to the level of the Prem. Yeah,
but then there's
obviously.
also another cultural difference, I think, in Australia where we value education much higher and sport as kind of a hobby. Like, we're a sporting country.
Really?
We're a sporting country, but people aren't like, oh, yeah, go try to pursue a...
I think it's the opposite.
Nah, bro. Like, I see it at the school that I work at, which is a sporting elite school, and people don't want to send their kids there because the education's not good. Wow, the education's average.
But is that just maybe a
That's just common sense, though, isn't it?
Well, I don't think that would be the case in many other countries around the world. People would be like, "Oh, you want to pursue a career in football? 100%."
But I think
That's
In Western
North
countries, it would
migrants
be.
though. Migrants play a big part in that.
what do you mean?
Because if they're bringing their kids to Australia, they're like, I don't want you to go fucking slack off playing soccer at school. I want you to become a doctor or a lawyer.
It's not just migrants, bro. I think it's everyone. Everyone, well, even AFL players. Look at the way how seriously they take their training when they're a junior. Half of the year they play cricket. That would never happen in any other country in the world. Everything would be football. Wake up, football, football, football. I'm not going to school. Football.
Maybe it's because we don't have the structure here. If we had the infrastructure that we could provide that for people, but you literally can't do that here, even if you wanted to.
Vinny, can I ask?
Unless you go to Roval and then play for a fucking A-League academy. Like, it's a lot. Sorry, Jake.
No, you're right, Vinny. Can I ask you, when did you feel? And I'm going to open up the door to just the book and maybe the Prem here because I'm itching to talk about Prem. But just before we even get into Ange and what you've done, like when did you feel, or when did you know that a book should be written on Postecologu?
I didn't, to be honest, because the way it happened was, again, funnily enough, by accident. So I've always wanted to write a book about something in Australian football. I just didn't know what it would be. And on the morning he got confirmed as the Tottenham Hotspur manager, or our morning, it was after it had happened, there was a meeting happening in our offices at the SMH from the publisher that I ended up signing up with, Hachette, who were coming in to do like a routine talk to the journos to basically say, this is who we are, these are the kind of books we're looking for, this is how the process works. I didn't go to that meeting because I was filing stories about Ange being Tottenham Hotspur manager, but I knew it was on and I was spewing that I missed it because I wanted to hear that stuff. So I found the bloke who did the meeting afterwards in our office kitchen. He was hanging around talking to people. And I said, how you going? Sorry I missed the thing. I was doing this stuff about Ange Postecoglu. Do you have any like PowerPoints from like your presentation or whatever? And he goes, oh yeah, we do. That's interesting. Oh, Ange, that's big news, huh? We've been thinking about like, should we find a writer to write a book about him? And then I'm like, oh, well, yeah, look, because when I
know a guy.
Yeah. So in the era when I was at Sportal with Gold Coast was also the era of Ange at Brisbane Roar.
Correct, right?
And then later when I got a job with AAP in working from Brisbane, I would often do a lot of Socceroos games, which included some travel on the road with the Socceroos, like when I said Saudi before,
Yep.
I was there through that. And so I'm kind of like, and I knew a lot of people, everyone, like players, coaches and all that. I'm like, well, like, man, me? Like, I don't know.
So wait a second. So you've spoken about this accidental journey, And
a
he's just
fluke,
walked
man.
into a kitchen and gone, guys, like, hey, we need to write. He was like, I write.
Yeah.
For those, actually, by the way, sorry, I didn't. Vince Rugari wrote a book called ANGEBALL that's been published, and it is everywhere. By the way, like every bookstore has it, and it couldn't be.
I'm spewing,
It couldn't be a
though,
more
when they
timely
do,
book.
because that means it hasn't been sold. You know what I mean? If a bookstore's got it, that means people are slacking.
Well, like, you know, it's
gotta be-
visible, man.
Nah. But legit, that's how. And so we exchanged contact information, and then literally just before the Women's World Cup was starting, I had a Zoom with this guy, and he's like, "Yeah, look, we want to make you an offer to do the book," and I'm like, "All right, damn, okay, I got to do this World Cup first, but let me think about it." So I had to find a literary agent to represent me to try and make sure I got. The primary aim was in negotiations to try and get more time to do the book. Because in the end, I only had 4 months. From the end of the Women's World Cup to basically my birthday, which is January 12, that's when I wrote the book.
4 months on someone's whole life.
Yeah.
What's the process of writing a book?
It's hectic.
Like,
Full
I have
on.
no idea.
I'll get into that in a second, but the other thing I had to do was make sure that Ange was okay with me doing it.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is the
I
process
knew,
of that?
obviously, I didn't know. A lot of people probably think I'm like texting Ange every day or something like that. Like, we have a relationship, but we don't talk often. Like, every 6 months we might exchange emails. But I would like to think that through covering Australian football the way I did, I got a bit of respect from him. And then when he went overseas, I would interview him when he was available to do stories about what was happening at Yokohama or whatever. And he never told me, but I had a feeling that, like, well, you don't think I'm an idiot, so I might be a shot here. And he's like, yeah, look, like, you go for it, basically, is what he said. But and he said, like, you write the book that you want to write, not the book that you think I would want you to write. So technically, it's not an official biography. And the reason why I never thought to do a book on Ange is because I always thought, like, well, if you're going to do a book on Ange, he needs to write it almost, or you need to have, like, full access to him. I only spoke to him for, in total, 1 hour for writing the book. The rest of the book is used from previous interviews I'd had with him, stuff he's said out there, which I've attributed. And, like, I spoke to, like, 50 plus other people who would, like, play it under him and all that sort of stuff to piece together the picture. So that's why the idea never entered my head beforehand to do the book on him. But once the stars aligned, I figured as well, man, I'm going to be so pissed if in 6 months' time some other dude has written a book on Ange and you could have and you didn't.
Can you summarize for listeners out there to obviously big up the book and get out there and buy it, but, like, summarize, obviously it's about Ange, but sort of the depth of the book in itself.
It's just his whole story, man. Like, and
So from South Melbourne,
yeah, from childhood
all the way to Tottenham
where he is
Hotspur.
today. It's the full story. A lot of it, we all know it, right? Because we've been lucky enough to live through it and watch it as it happened, all that sort of stuff. So it's basically just like telling the story for those who don't know it or want to relive it. What happened, basically? How did Ange go from this Greek migrant child to English Premier League manager? And when I was sitting down trying to figure out how do I do this book, how do I structure it or whatever, I didn't have much time, so I figured the best way to go was chronological rather than chop it up in some fancy way.
Fuck that.
But also, think about his career, man. The chapters outline themselves.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's a childhood chapter, then there's playing, then there's coaching at South, then there's junior national team, then I did a whole chapter on the interview with Craig Foster because I thought that was important. And then there was a chapter where he couldn't get a job, and there's a chapter when he was at Brisbane, and then from each one it's like, well, you can already imagine, if you haven't read the book, what the chapter would be like.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So let's touch on that Craig Foster one. Because Rash actually put up a video the other day saying a lot of people in Australian football that maybe doubted Ange and now...
Yeah, which, by the way, I collaborated with Suda to Buddha, but for some reason our admin manager didn't post it on our page.
Oh, well, for some reason you're not checking because it's on there.
Yeah, it is on there.
Is there?
So better watch what you say about that. You better watch what you say about the admin
I take it
manager
back, sorry.
because he's on job apparently. But anyway, that Craig Foster interview, what's something that really sticks out to it from you and how have you seen their relationship change since then?
Has it changed?
Yeah. I mean, it's a real shame that it happened in the first place.
It's
because
shocking, man.
I actually, when I was doing this chapter on that interview, I've got one of Foz's books. It's called Foz on Football. It's basically here's how I think about football sort of thing. And you read through it, and it's like, man, what he's talking about is Ange's football. He thinks pretty much exactly the same things about how the game should be played, how it would make Australia a better place, all this sort of stuff. So it was a bit of a shame that it happened to begin with.
But was Ange doing that back then?
Look,
Because from what I've been told, it wasn't. It wasn't that type of...
Probably the early stages.
yeah, it was. We're talking 2000 to 2007, which is like 20 years ago. So he certainly wasn't the coach he is now, and he didn't have
Obviously,
all his
right?
ideas down pat.
Obviously.
But also, he was coaching through a really difficult time in Australian soccer when the old federation went bust, the NSL went bust. There was 12 months where young players couldn't play in a national league because there wasn't one. You know, the Lowies took over. There was no money, and then there was money, but were they spending it on youth football? It was a really turbulent time. So I think that was a factor too. Also, we went into Asia. So the difference, and in particular with the
quality, man.
his youth national team football, right? Back in the day, the Socceroos weren't making World Cups. So in Australia, people were like looking to the Ollie Roos and the Joeys and the young Socceroos, the people who would watch SBS for 3 hours every Sunday morning. That was their measure of how are we going as a football nation. And because we were in Oceania, we were able to qualify for all the World Cups basically with our eyes closed. And so things looked better than what they actually were. And yeah, there were a couple of times when under Les Scheinflug, I think we made a final of a youth World Cup and lost. I think it was to Brazil. So we had some good runs as well, for sure. But people were looking at that as like, oh, well, we should be flying. Our youth team should be flying. But then Ange takes over. We're going to Asia for the first time. The first tournaments we participated in Asia, Ange was the coach of the Joeys and the young Socceroos. And we're feeling our way into this stuff, right? We don't know what to expect. The first tournament was in Laos. And they took a squad of 14 and 15-year-olds to go play in an under 16 or 17 tournament in Laos. Australian football had never been to Laos before.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, how do we know what to expect, what it's like, the setup, logistics? Should we have picked different players for this? And so in anything new, you're going to make new mistakes. And that's what we were doing in that period. Combined with that, Ange wasn't the coach that he is now. That's sort of why he failed. And that's why Foz went for him, because the results weren't there. And the team, it's not like they were, and it's really hard. I couldn't watch any of these games because they don't exist on archives to watch. But like reading, reporting about it and talking to people who were involved, it's not like they were playing prime Ange ball back then. It was a battle. It was a struggle. But the thing about youth football is, do you care if your teams make a World Cup, or do you care that you're producing excellent players?
So
Do you know what I mean?
It rocked the boat a bit though, because I remember when Foz did that, and Ange speaks about it, but I also experienced it as well with Jan Versleten. When we spoke about this before, we lost that game to Spain, and it was like straight away in the change room, we were hearing what he was saying about our coach, like who'd made every World Cup and produced all these players to a pro level, and just based off like 90 minutes of what was there, just hammered him. And it kind of tarnished his image in the game. But he got every team through Asia to a junior World Cup.
You mean Craig Foster was...
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, absolutely hammered him in the media because we lost. And it came back to the dressing room and it kind of really killed us all. Like, obviously it was a bad game, but gone through the team sheet, I just signed for Gold Coast. Like, there's levels, you know what I mean? It's just the fact that we'd performed the way we did the whole way through.
Just on that chapter, like the post that I did the other day was about, it was about more than just Craig Foster. I feel like there was way more people that were doubting Ange through that period and criticising him really heavily, weren't opening doors for him and stuff. Feels like, I don't know, I don't know his story like you do, but it feels like he has had to fucking bash through walls to get his opportunities.
Totally. And
especially in Australia. In Australia.
The other thing that happened in Australia during that period was we went from old soccer to new football. And that's a mentality shift too. Because I remember thinking around the time of the interview and when he got sacked and all that and couldn't get a job, like, I didn't know who this bloke was. I followed the NSL a little bit, but like, I was 10 years old when they were winning titles in South Melbourne. So it's like, I don't know. And so the whole mentality was we're moving forward, we're moving away from NSL, all the old guard. We got this new idea, we got these new people, we got money, bringing in Dutch coaches. We just qualified for the World Cup, 2006. Future's looking good. Even I remember having the thought in my head, like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, this Postecoglou bloke, like, he's just a relic of the old NSL sort of thing. And it's like, it was a huge mistake that we all collectively made as a game back then, because it's like we threw the baby out with the bathwater. And Ange was sort of part of that baby being thrown out. You know what I mean?
He
Like
was a little Greek baby.
it's crazy in retrospect to think that like people wouldn't hire this bloke because of his background and the idea that we had to move on from people like him, which basically means old wogs from the NSL.
Because he couldn't get a job. And I think that's part of why he's got the philosophy of always taking Australians with him. And you would know that better than me.
Yeah, and it's also why he always tries to make sure that his destiny is in his own hands in terms of leaving jobs. I don't think he'll get sacked at Spurs because I think he'll probably walk before he does, sort of thing, because he doesn't want to experience what he experienced.
A big call.
Yeah, I know. Doesn't want to experience what he experienced back then again. Doesn't want to leave his hand in future in the hands of other people.
So just on we're here now on Spurs. You're on Twitter. You've written the book. You are a Ange Venger. Why are you so sold on him as a manager? And then also explain to those who don't know exactly what Ange Ball is, because I feel like people have a rough idea, but people might not know exactly what it is. Yeah. So why are you so sold on him as a manager and his tactics?
Because I see the vision. I have seen the vision applied in too many formats / location scenarios for it to be a fluke or not applicable to this next step. You got to remember, when he went from NSL to the A-League, it was a bit like, well, can you coach at this level? You coached in the NSL. You couldn't. We don't know. Then when he went from the A-League to the national team, it was like, oh, all right, well, you did well in the A-League, but are you an international manager? We'll find out. Did well there. And it's like, well, all right, you can coach Australian players really well, but can you coach in Japan? There's a language barrier. It's different there, huh? You could do that too. And then it's like, all right, well, mate, you did well in Asia, didn't you? But can you coach in Europe? Welcome to Celtic, buddy. Pressure's high. Can you do this? Are you capable? Yeah, he did. He can. And already at Tottenham, I believe in the moments when they've been good, you can see the team that they could become. When you don't beat I know Man City had a rough trot, but you don't beat them 4-0 at their place by accident.
So
you don't get the wins that they've had and play the way they have by accident. It's a question of consistency now. And for me, they just need to build the squad to enable that to function consistently and through the really tough schedule that they have.
Well, I hate Spurs, but I do want to give them some slack in the sense of they've had the most fucked injury list.
Scissors here, bro.
But
yeah, you need scissors.
do we have scissors? Well, yeah, but at what like?
Thanks for giving me the red one as well, by the way, bro.
Yeah, I
appreciate it.
don't worry, bro.
Yeah.
You're my boy. OGs, you know. Nor do you have anything to cut the super duper? Hey, the super dupers are back, Buddhas.
Man, I haven't ripped the super duper lid off since I was like 7 years old.
So I've got.
By the way, how much are super dupers? I used to get them for 20 cents at school.
Well, I got 2 points to Ange at the moment with Tottenham because, like, the fact that Arne Slot, Pep Guardiola, Amorim, all these kind of managers that are very set in their ways and that don't change, which seems to be kind of a trait with some of the top managers in the world. They give Ange props about his football and style.
Yeah, and it's not fake either, by the way.
No, it's
People
genuine.
say, oh, you just talk up the coach before you play them.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
Sense of hope.
But at what point, to your point, Jerome, around the injuries, is Ange pushing the Ferraris to the absolute maximum every single week with the style that they play, an impact to why people are getting injured?
Two things on that. One, this whole narrative that he trains them into the ground is rubbish because they barely train. Particularly the last 2 months, they barely train because they got 3 games a week. What time you got to train into the ground?
I'm talking the style of play.
That's
in game, right?
I'm getting to that too. Right. They signed him for his style of play. They didn't sign him to be like, oh, you're a good manager, see how you go, sort of thing. They signed him, they identified him because he plays a style of football that club wants and is in that club's DNA and they want to get back to. So then it's like, in that situation, it doesn't make sense then to say, well, you've got to ease up because you're injuring the players. First of all, I don't think the style, yes, it's intense by design, but I don't think the style is so intense that it's basically like chucking blokes in a meat grinder every week.
What's his record with injuries at other clubs? Because that would make sense that if it's the problem with his style, it would have happened other places.
And this is interesting, right? And this is some of the fun I have on Twitter with Spurs fans who scan Wikipedia and look for evidence that he does do this meat grinder stuff that I'm talking about. At Celtic, they had some injuries initially, but not as many as now. And also, they signed more players, which enabled them to rotate and maintain the intensity that you have to play at for this football to work. Spurs didn't do that. They came in with a thin squad, and it's taken until literally today for them to sign an outfielder in the transfer window.
What do you say to the people that are adding you after a loss, saying, "Oh, the certain Australian journalist is fucking quiet now"? Because I see it all the time. And like, people really go out of their day to be like, "Oh, I'm going to get online and see what Vince thinks about this loss."
Yeah, how sad is that though?
I know.
Like, what do you have to do with Tottenham losing a game?
I say talk your talk, brother.
Yeah.
I have no dramas with keeping like, I will jump off Ange, so to speak, or I will say it's not working when I see evidence that it's not working. But I don't see that. The fact he hasn't been fired yet suggests to me that even Levy sees that. And so when those people say that, I'm just like, all right, talk.
Well,
I got no problem with staying on the ship, and if it gets fired tomorrow, whatever. But like, man, what do you mean?
Well, they're one game away from a League Cup final.
And the other thing is, I've learned through the mistake of my own not to write off Ange. There were times in the past where I'm thinking like, man, you got to change the way you play, or that's not going to work at this level or whatever. And it's always been proved wrong.
What did you think about the game against Chelsea? That was the turning point for me as a little bit of...
You're talking about last season or this season?
Last season, the 9 men, the high line.
I loved it.
You loved it.
The reason I loved it is because that was the 11th game of his tenure, and he's still trying to imprint his philosophy. And don't forget the way that game went as well. They were 2-1 down, and I think Dyer and Son nearly scored to make it 2-2.
Yep.
And I think one was deflected, it was offside or whatever. And then from one of those shots, Nico Jackson went to the other side and scored to make it 3-1, and then they scored again to make it 4-1. The game didn't go like that. You know what I mean? They were imagine one of those goals go in.
We didn't demolish them.
No.
Yeah.
Even though it looked like they were so open or whatever, it took Chelsea until the end of the game to figure out how to play through that.
It's also because we fucking suck at finishing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't any other team doing that. We would have won 6-7-0.
He was sacrificing the possibility of 3 points to put a flag in the ground in that game and say, this is what we're doing. It doesn't matter. This is what he told the Socceroos boys throughout as well. When they were playing in 40-degree heat in Dubai or terrible pitches in Iran, it's like, don't worry about that. We play this way always. And when you play that way always, that's the mindset that enables a team like Brisbane Roar to pull a grand final win out of their ass at the end. Because they don't have to suddenly become attacking to change a game. They don't actually have to change anything if they want a winner at the end. They just have to keep doing what they're doing. Do you know what I mean?
Can you explain, like what we said before, can you explain exactly what Ange Ball is tactically for those who don't fully know?
I spent a whole book doing it, so forgive me if I give you the abridged version. But it's just dominate. Dominate in all aspects. It means defense starts from your striker pressing. It means it's one unit. It means if you've got an option to go forward, you take it because you've got someone behind you who will back you up. Or it means if you're going to play a pass that you're a little bit dicey about and you've got support around you, there's no need to feel dicey about it. Do it. You've got people around you. Do it. It means in a way, it's almost like a frame of mind in itself. It means don't let other people tell you what you can do.
And which is that's his persona, right? That's him. His
and the best
philosophy of life personified in the style of football.
And the best managers are that. Yeah. Like even a Mourinho, who is the other way, you would say, but that's him. That's his reflect. And so
pragmatic.
When that style is integrated with who you are as a person, it becomes something more than a tactic. It becomes real, and it enables players to buy into it at a deeper level because it's not just some diagrams.
Yeah,
this is who we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not just words. Like
you
talk to any of the players who've experienced it, and you did, didn't you, for a little bit?
Yeah.
It's more than that. You know.
Yeah. So and like it's you can see it in his career trajectory, and like we were saying before, and he's got to bash down these doors and be extremely resilient to get to where he's gotten to. That's his story, right? So that feeds into his conviction in the change room.
It's also why you got hired. Why
Yeah.
would you change the thing that is the reason why you got hired to keep your job? To me, like I understand the logic, but if you think about it slightly differently, it actually makes no sense at all.
Well, look, I think people, what they don't understand is that even the best managers of all time have been sacked numerous times. If it doesn't work at Tottenham for Ange, because I actually want him to leave, I'll be able to enjoy his tenure more. If he goes to a club where they can fully buy into it, there's not as much pressure, And I know it might be saying like, Ange would literally turn around to me and say, "Oh, mate, what's the point of that? I want to go somewhere where it's an absolute challenge." And
I saw your impression of him, by the way. It was pretty spot on.
thank you.
Except for the 10 toes bit. I was a bit like, I don't know if you'd say that, man.
Someone this morning said this is abysmal, and I was like, "Cunt, I'm Aussie. You're English. Shut up." I know him. Anyway, I want him to go somewhere else and succeed because they probably have the worst stain on them, the worst stench on them in world football when it comes to, their trophy cabinet and Levy being one of the worst owners ever. Everyone says it. I'd love for him to go somewhere else.
Doesn't that make his achievement at Tottenham even greater?
What achievement?
That's the thing. And that's why
he's one game off the final.
That's why the answer is
90 minutes.
The answer you just said he would give is because, that's also why he went. You know what I mean? He's not going to go somewhere. He said before, he wrote in his book, "I'm a coach who climbs mountains. I must climb mountains." In terms of he's not just going to go somewhere where it's all sweet and happy days and we'll give you time, mate. And no, he wants challenges. He didn't just take the job at Brisbane Roar to win an A-League title. His whole idea was, how do I push Australian football forward through the football that we're going to play?
Does he take a backward step though? And I mean backward step by the stature of Tottenham as a club, one of the biggest clubs in England. Does he take a backward step to propel forward?
He may have to if he gets sacked, but I don't believe he will. I still have the belief that they'll be successful under him at some point. What success means?
That's what I want to ask, yeah.
I don't know. It might mean a couple of cups. I hope it means a Premier League title one day. Or it might just mean Tottenham become really strong contenders every year, playing excellent football that everyone's like, wow, they're there or thereabouts, aren't they?
Which I don't think he would accept, but being real, the Premier League is the best it's ever been. It is unbelievable at the moment, and people aren't giving
recognize that.
People
enough.
don't recognise that exactly.
I said this on a Spurs podcast the other day, but it's a sign of how football is broken that Bournemouth can outbid a club like AC Milan for a player.
Yeah.
It should.
That's why the Super League. That's why teams are trying to bring the Super League.
We have
in,
a
right?
Super League now. It's called the Premier League.
Yeah, well, that is correct.
Yeah,
right?
and that's why the other clubs in Europe want a Super League, so that's different. But we all grow up with a hierarchy of football, and that's not correct in terms of the financial disparity there. So you're dealing with clubs who are mid-table, who have they're not just mid-table clubs.
No,
some of them are unbelievable setups. Look at Nottingham Forest at the moment.
That's what I'm saying. Could Ange drop into one of those clubs?
But
he could.
That's stepping up.
Well, for now it is, yeah. But I mean, of course, I agree. But in stature, you look at Spurs,
But has he not been supported? Do you think financially? Because people are saying, obviously, with the injuries, they need to buy in this window and so forth. But if you look at the amount of players he has signed, maybe yes, he does need time. But I think as great as his style is to watch, I mean, you watch the Pedro Porro and Udogie in the attackers' 18-yard box as fullbacks, and then they get caught out towards, obviously, they like to play a high press, they like to push numbers forward, but they leave so many little people at the back, or sort of so little people at the back. In the Prem, you get punished with that.
That's true, but also before the injury crisis, okay, they didn't win all their games, but their underlying stats and their defensive numbers were actually really good. They had one of the best defenses in the Prem for the first month and a bit of the season, even though people were they're so open. But it's well, you might think that, but they're actually not conceding.
So
goals.
that kind of elevates your view of why you're still steady on where he is, because obviously,
yeah, I genuinely think it's not just about the squad's not big enough to cope with the schedule that they've just had, and that's why they've lost games, in my opinion. There's no tactical solution to the problems that Spurs have had for the last 2 months, in my opinion.
It's off the pitch,
and that could be also why they're getting the injuries. Right?
And don't forget as well, when a player's tired, knackered, exhausted, the first thing that goes is not their hamstring, it's their decision making. So that's why there's been games where they look off it or whatever. Or they
when did the Spurs? When did the tide change? Because when he came in, it's we've got Ange, he's clapping the fans, they're pushing top four. They're beating good sides. They look good. They're playing a different style. They've just come from, Conte and Mourinho days where it's all grim. When did it start being because now I struggle to find a Spurs fan that is fully backing.
Is that why you're wanting him to go? Because it's everyone's turned on him, or it seems that way?
I'll tell you when, by the way. The short answer is when they started losing, because obviously Premier League fans are the most reactive there is.
Fickle.
That's how it goes. But I think part of it is also, remember that game they played at the end of last season against Arsenal, where if they won, against City, when if they won, they would have given Arsenal the title.
Yes.
And he pushed back against the overarching attitude of many Spurs fans, which is we would like to lose this game because we don't want them to win the title.
Oh, mate, I'm so glad.
Which is the opposite of Ange's whole mentality. Like, he's almost allergic to that thinking. You know what I mean?
Was Tottenham Champions League chance to win?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the catch as well. So it's like we'd rather not go in the Champions League so they don't win the title.
And look, I get it. I don't want to tell people how to support their club or whatever. I haven't been a Tottenham fan my whole life, so I don't know the pain, etc.
I fully get it.
But I also think that's not the correct mentality to have. As Ange said in his press conferences, and I believe independently, regardless of whether he said it or not, if you want to deny your team a title, win it yourself. Like, I think about... it's funny, just through my life in football and being a journo, who is my club? I don't really know if I have one. The most passionate team that I am about, aside from the Socceroos, is Port Adelaide, right? And I'm thinking, would I sacrifice Port Adelaide winning a game or whatever if it meant the Crows would win the grand final? Because there's not much more I hate in this world than the Adelaide Football Club. Nah. Like, I hate the Crows, man. Deeply, passionately. I can push it to the side when I'm reporting, but, like, I hate them, man. I wouldn't do it because I just think that's not Port Adelaide.
Am I right to think that Ange had some kind of a similar experience with the Australian mentality with not being happy with just being, making it to a World Cup and not wanting to win it or that kind of stuff?
100%.
Right? Yeah.
That's what he was trying to... He was trying to break that mentality in Australia.
Yeah, because, for example, I saw we talked about it. We could talk about it now, but we were celebrating finishing second in, what was it, the under-17s World Cup 20 years ago or something?
Oh, it was a 25-year reunion.
25-year reunion of finishing...
They lost the World Cup final to Brazil.
Yeah, right.
And
I said in the group, I said, I don't know any other nation that would celebrate finishing second. And all due respect to the guys that were in that team, that's an amazing achievement, but I wouldn't be 25 years later celebrating that and saying we finished second because you didn't win really.
From a cultural standpoint, you mean of mentality?
And the mentality.
Because I was completely fine with that. I was like, that is the fact that they've come second and lost to Brazil by 1-0, it's like they almost won it.
I take you back to when we were qualifying for the 2018 World Cup and he brought in the back three. I think we all remember that and what that was like. I was actually in Iran. We were playing against Iraq and Ange called all us journos into a room. I got this is in the book. We all got a WhatsApp message from the media manager at the time, David Mason, who said, "Hey guys, Ange wants you in the meeting room at 1 p.m. He wants to go through some things." and I'm there just being like, "What did we write? What did I say that made him pissed?"
Had he ever done this before?
We're about to get a grilling, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
So we walk into this room and there's 6 chairs. It was me, Andy Harper, Simon Hill, Tom Smithies. Murray Shaw, might have been one or two others. Lynchy, maybe. Can't quite remember. Anyway, we think we're about to get a bollocking. And Ange is there and he gives us a rundown, basically, of... He tells us in advance, we're about to change to this new system, this 3-4-1-2, or 3-4-2-1, I think it was. He gives us a full presentation on why we're doing it, the evolution of the team, the reasons why we're doing it, the way it's going to work. And the info was under embargo until the team sheets were released. So we couldn't tell anyone about it, and it was off the record, so we couldn't record it or write down specific quotes. It was more just this is what's happening. Anyway, we brought that formation in, and the whole idea of it was, to come up with a style of game that would enable us to be at the World Cup and not just go and participate, but go and knock off a big team, right? That's the reason why he did it. And when it was good. But through qualifying, and this was the whole tension of that period, he was putting qualifying at risk for the World Cup to execute a style that we would want to roll out at the World Cup. And it was a real difficult time and the performances weren't great because they were all trying to get used to this style of football. But that's similar to the Tottenham thing. It's like, what do you want? Do you want special or do you just want good? Do you know what I mean? So, and Australian football, when it looked like qualification was at risk, we all collectively shat ourselves. We were worried because we're so worried that if we don't make a World Cup, that the house is going to crumble. Do you know what I mean? Because it feels like we've got this real loose grip on where we are in Australian sport. We fear that if something goes real bad like that everything will be lost. And so there was the tension of Australian football's neuroticism and panicking versus Ange being like, nah, forge through. It's going to be short-term pain, but it's going to be a long-term gain. And in the end, we qualified, but he got fed up with, he was trying to break this, and he realised that it wasn't going to break. He was on as he said, a personal crusade. And so he realised it was never going to happen. So he left. He didn't leave because FFA didn't support him or whatever. There's a whole bunch of theories that people have about why he left, but the main one is he didn't think he could take Australian football to where he wanted it to go. And maybe no one can, but he tried and he failed, in his words, and he gave up.
Has any other manager ever, well, maybe they have, but have they ever said, get every fucking journal in here right now, I want to explain my formation to you, but don't say anything?
I would imagine it's happened a few times, probably not very common, but it's smart from him as well, right?
Yeah, I think smart.
Rather than
get you on side.
Rather than just spring it on us and be like, what are you doing? Because then our only chance to ask questions would have been in the press conference after a bad result or whatever. His thought was, if I let these guys in and explain the reasons, they might still smash me, but they might understand it.
Yeah.
I understood it probably because of that, and I wish I had that thing recorded. Like, I wish I could go back to that room and sit through that again, because I don't know shorthand. I don't know I wish I could write down all the things he said. All I remember is just sitting there being like, man, this guy's a bit crazy, but I love it. Do you know what I mean?
Were journos asking questions throughout the thing? Why the hell would you do that one, Ange? That seems like a wild move.
Yeah. We had the opportunity to. It was like you were back in school, to be honest. And so it was exactly like that. And I would say I wish I had more details to give around this, because we're talking 8 years ago now. I can't remember shit. But that was I just remember the feeling there, and just the feeling of understanding it and being like, this is going to be a wild ride, but if it goes where I think it could go, this is going to be mad.
Just on...
And that, is just encapsulated is how I feel about Ange's football overall, which is it's going to be a white knuckle ride. There's going to be times when you think you're going to fall off the roller coaster, but just wait till the roller coaster goes up and down and up and down. You're going to have the time of your life. And for me, I would rather that and risk the possibility of having a bad time versus just, sit back, guys. The other team's better than us. We're going to... Yeah. And other people have different opinions on football, and that's fine. But this fundamentally is why I'm so supportive of Ange, is because I'm like that. Or I'd like to think I'm like that. You know what I mean? If I was a manager, I'd probably be different. I'd probably be the opposite, because I'd probably look to preserve my job. But he doesn't, and I respect that so much, and I feel like that's an attitude we need more of in our game. And the most fun I've ever had watching football, to be honest, is watching Ange's teams when they're at their peak. There's a feeling, and maybe this is because my formative years in journalism were during those times.
Yeah.
Barcelona.
Watching Barcelona, man. There's another story I have in the opening chapter of my book where I sort of explain how the book's going to be and where I'm from and what it's about. At uni, on the Gold Coast, you couldn't watch the A-League unless you had Foxtel back then. There was no KO back then in 2010. And some of my mates were Saudi study abroad students, legends, who, we played, football, futsal together, FIFA together, get on it, go out together, etc. These guys, when they're not in Saudi Arabia, they let their demons out. Yes. So they were on the Gold Coast. They were on the Gold Coast letting the demons out, and you can imagine what those demons entail.
Oh, that'd be some pretty
But they're rich, right? Because the Saudi government gives them a few $1,000s every month as a payment to be because they want Saudis to go overseas and experience Western culture and get a good education and come back and bring that here. That's why you're seeing Saudi Arabia changing so much, by the way, is because those people are coming back and they've seen what the world is like, and they want that for them to some extent.
100%.
Anyway, these guys loaded, had Foxtel for the Prem. And I would go to their house all the time to watch the Prem, because I loved the Prem back then as well. Still do, obviously. But I'd go to their place earlier and be like, "Oh, can we stop playing FIFA or COD for a bit?" Because that
Super Saturday,
Brisbane Roar are playing. There was some games on, and they'd be like, "Man, this shit again? Are you serious?" I'd be like, "Look, go outside and smoke, man. Just let me sit here and watch this game," because I was obsessed and all that. There was this one game I'll never forget. It was 7-1 against Adelaide United at Suncorp Stadium. In the book, Bessa Barisha talks about you can't play a game like this unless you have the perfect setup with the perfect play. Everything was perfect. They lost. They conceded the first goal, and then after that, they just went bang, 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 and they were carving up Adelaide so much. And I was telling these boys, I was like, "Oi, dickheads, come here! Like, you think this is crap? Seriously, this one time, listen to me. Watch this." And they're sitting around, and by the end of it, they're scoring their 5th goal, and they're like, "Oh shit!" And and then I'm in a moment like that, I was like, "It's not just me being obsessed with Australian football here. Like, there is actually something special here." And that feeling, watching Brisbane Roar at their best, was like, it's almost like a high I'm still chasing to an extent. You know what I mean?
It was really hard to play against as a player.
Yeah.
Like it was like it felt like you were just running.
Reminds me, and we should talk about Gold Coast, and this will be a good segue. I think it was the season before you signed. You might have been the youth team. Remember that? I think it was the last game of the second season of Gold Coast United. They were at Brisbane Roar. It was just after the floods in Brisbane as well. I don't know if you guys remember that. Yeah, they won 4-0, and they carved Gold Coast United up. It was, I think Miron said something like, it was like the Harlem Globetrotters against the Washington Generals. Like, they were taking the piss.
I've spoken to players, and I've heard many players say that at that time, because I never played against them, but at that time, that like when they're going in the airport and stuff, they were like, "Fuck, we've got to go there. Like, this is going to be fucked.
Yeah.
We're just going to run for 90 minutes, and they're going to smash us."
And particularly if you're a Southern team, the heat. So it's like you've got both combinations. Like, fuck,
this was a Gold Coast team. They were used to the heat.
Yeah.
So that day, I was still doing. I was the back end of the internship then. Before I was starting as a journo, it was my transition time. I was able to go to I parked at the Avika Resort, where all the deer would come around the. Remember that?
Of course. Avika, I forgot that fucking name.
Yeah,
Deer.
It was the Gold Coast headquarters, bro. Get Clyde's little.
Clive Plummer bought like a place where they used to have the V Festival on the Gold Coast. It was like a wedding reception venue.
Bro, we need to go
We gotta get
Gold Coast
Clive on
stories.
here,
We need to go
man.
some Gold Coast stories with Vinny, bro.
An actual animal.
So I'd
Clive on.
the car park was down here,
Yeah.
and the offices were up here, and I'd go back to my car after a day of doing the internship, and there'd be like 5 deer, because we're talking about large fields, and there's just these deer, and there'd be deer surrounding my car, and I'd be like, should I like go, or like, am I scared of them, or are they scared of me?
Hey, dear. All good? Yeah. All
Yeah.
good.
Anyway, I parked my car there that day. I took the team bus to the game, watched the game in a box with Jason Collina was injured, Pat Hedges,
Yep. Shout out, Pat.
a couple of other people, and we were all just sitting there, just like, and our jaws were on the floor because Gold
Even
Coast, don't
Jason
forget-
Cholinas?
Yeah, back then, don't forget the team that Gold Coast had was sick.
Bro, that's why I signed for him.
Exactly.
And then they all just decided, now fuck this.
And
Joke's here, I'm going.
Barcelona were just chopping them up, and I just remember being in that room, and then the bus on the way back was almost a bit. Everyone was stunned. It was like, what just happened?
Yeah. Yeah, that was peak. That was peak Ange, that sort of second Gold Coast year.
Yeah.
Because I think the third, the one experience I played against him, it was, it felt like there was like a marathon aspect to like the minutes, the game. Like you almost felt like you couldn't stop it.
Yeah.
Just last thing on this Ange book before we touch on Gold Coast United. What's, in terms of gathering the information, what would be your most unique conversation you had with someone? Like, did you get in touch with someone and just think, holy fuck, I've got a gem here? Like, was there one specific person that just stood out like, oh my God, I'm so happy I got you for this book? Or like a story that you gathered?
Quite a few, to be honest. Like, no real standouts because there were probably like 6 or 8 interviews that I thought were like, oh man, you've given me some absolute gold there.
Yeah.
None that sort of go above the other, but like just to mention some favourites, the way Eric Pardalou talked about the experience of playing for Ange and also the feeling when he left. He said like it was like your father died, to be honest. It was because like his career wouldn't have happened really if Ange hadn't signed him and put him in that exact position to perform that exact
He's a
role.
monster, that guy.
It was like Busquets,
Yeah.
to be honest. For 5 minutes there,
Yeah.
Pardalou looked unplayable.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen without Ange. And so he was really good in illustrating that. There were some other ones just talking to some South Melbourne guys from back in the day because my recollection of that is not great. One of my favourite bits is a couple of the South Melbourne boys are talking about they're in Brazil before this Club World Championship, the first one in 2000. They're about to go out into the Maracanã. and play against Vasco da Gama with Romario and Edmundo and all that.
South Melbourne.
And yeah, little old South Melbourne from the year 2000. And they're sitting in the Maracanã change rooms and they can actually see the ceiling bounce a little bit because it's concrete terraces and there's 66,000 Brazilians up there who think they're about to fucking feast on these Aussie blokes, right? Anyway, they're all shitting themselves. And Ange goes to the front of the room and presses play on a tape recorder and he starts playing Hunters and Collectors Holy Grail. And then like the mood sort of just like, everyone's a little bit more calm and everyone's like, yeah, we're Aussies. Like,
That's fucking amazing,
the song.
bro.
that was the song. That's why I called that chapter Holy Grail.
On the
That's
road
mad, bro.
to the Holy
Grail.
Grail.
South Melbourne in the Maracanã playing Holy
can you
Grail.
imagine?
Fucking hell,
What was
boys.
the
We're
result
fucking
in that
Aussies.
game?
They lost their last 2-0, but they played really well. Wait,
They lost.
funny,
They went
huh?
on to lose 2-0.
That's all right. That's a win.
No, he said that. That's a running joke with Mike Bassett, England manager.
It's funny though, right? Because like Holy Grail, you play that song to me now, and I'll be like, "That's a mad song, thanks." But it's a bit like if I hear, what's the song they play after all the Socceroos?
Land Down Under?
Land Down Under.
Yeah.
You play Land Down Under at a World Cup game after Australia's won, and I'll lose my head, sort of thing. Like when you're overseas and
You hear that.
part of something. I'm not saying like I was representing Australia, but you're there for us. We're Aussies out of our like country, and like. Imagine being in that change room and hearing Holy Grail. You'd be like, "Oh,
you
let's
feel
go
a
now."
sense of pride
Yeah.
for your country.
I have never, I'm not that patriotic, but when people come for Australia or the Socceroos or whatever, especially at a World Cup, I am fucking unbearable. Like, I am the most patriotic guy ever. I don't necessarily like Land Down Under as a song.
Yeah.
If I heard it
Cool.
in a stadium with
Mate.
a bunch of other Aussies around me, like, fuck you, cunts, yes,
Yeah.
they're Aussie.
That was me in the press box or press area in Qatar after we beat Tunisia and Denmark.
Yep.
I'm professional when I'm writing and talking and interviewing and all that. But in that moment, I just had to give myself a little bit of a beauty.
Yeah.
And Land Down Under was playing the remix too, which I wasn't a huge fan of, but now I love because I associate it with those moments.
Yeah.
Even Women's World Cup with the Matildas as well.
Yep.
You play that song after an Aussie World Cup win and man, it's over.
Yeah.
I'm losing it.
Yeah.
I'm
Fuck,
losing
I
it.
love us. Oh, my God.
And just to bring it back to Ange, that's why I'm so all in with it, is because when people overseas have a crack at him and his record and don't see the big picture, they're not just having a crack at him. It's not about him. It's about all of us in Australian football. Like when they're saying, who's this bloke from a farmers league? Oh, yeah, it's easy to win an A-League title. It's like, no, you idiot. No, you're glossing over a whole lot of basically
What he's
an
broke
aspect
through.
of life that not only he's broken through, but also I would say to varying degrees, probably to a large degree for all of us, we've all dedicated our lives to it to some degree, Australian football.
Yeah,
And they're crapping on it.
And I don't think we'll even see the impact, and not to just glaze too much, but even for the players, every player that has ever, an Aussie player that's gone international, would have had the same experience where they just discredit you completely as a player. They go, "You're Aussie, yeah, he's going to be shit."
Yeah,
but
I can't
Ange
handle
is the first one really that's had, obviously with good players, Tim Cahill, Harry Kill, and all that. But Ange has like massively smashed that, I reckon, for the
I hope
future.
so.
I think.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like that, there's a real sense of.
But that's the real point of it for me. People were a bit like, "Oh, you're an Ange Glazer or whatever," and like say what you want, or I don't give a shit. But like that's why.
Yeah.
It's not just about him. It's bigger than that. You know?
Yeah, spot on.
I think to sort of round that off, I think John Aloisi was saying it the other day. Fans, all of us, including myself, are very surface level, and it's week by week, and it's fickle, especially Premier League fans. Fans don't know as much as they think they know. Like, even with John saying, like, you know, people are saying, "Oh, why the fuck did he sub him off?" Blah, 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 blah. You don't know.
Why the fuck's he done that?
You
literally said that. He goes, "Hold on a second. Why the fuck's he done that?"
No, I'm taking accountability here. I do it. But all of us fans do it because in the moment, that's what you do. Like in the moment, if you think your fucking favourite player is killing shit and he gets subbed off out of nowhere, you're not to know any better. I'm not blaming the fans. But it does help when books like Ange Ball come out and people like Vince shed a light on, hold on, it's a bit more than you think. And then reading stuff like that, hearing stuff like that opens your mind a bit more to maybe be a bit more willing and open to different styles, to different attitudes, to different approaches. Because like I said, it's a result-based business and fans are in that business as well.
But any Aussie shitting on Ange, to me, is absolutely wild, bro. Like,
Yeah,
you
I
are
don't
not
get
a
it.
fan of the game of football.
You should know.
If you are picking apart Ange and his philosophy
And
and
it's not
everything.
about are you pro Ange, anti Ange.
It's like, are you a-
It's a bit like, have you followed what he's done and learned the lessons from it? In terms of what I was saying before about like, I doubted him once. I won't doubt him again because I've seen what he can do. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit like,
absolutely
have you
wild,
actually
bro.
been watching closely and understood that?
I just wish he wasn't at Spurs. But anyway, that's for another time.
I'll put it this way, bro. At Spurs, he has access to like a huge amount of money and the best stadium in the world. Like he has a platform to do what he does. It's just got a culty aspect to not winning
He's got
titles.
the fucking worst owner ever, though. Fuck. What do you think of Levy?
A bit similar to what you're saying about there's a lot you don't know.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot you don't know around that as well. I think they should have spent more and earlier in this window to support him.
Yeah.
But I also am heartened by the fact he hasn't been sacked yet.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't mean he won't be, but it says to me that he's not going to be as reactive as he has been in the past.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
there's no point signing Ange as your manager unless you're going to give him what he needs to do what you hired him for.
Yeah,
But he's in both the cups still. That's
and
what's
there's
holding.
the FA Cup too.
Yeah. If they fall down, I don't know if Levy keeps him. That's. I mean, and I hope he does.
It's possible, but also it would
that's
be,
what he's hanging on
it
to,
would,
I
it
feel.
would go against the reason why he's kept him if he was to sack him after some cup competition failures.
Yeah.
If he thinks the overall direction they're going in is the correct direction of travel, which it seems you're not keeping him on just. I struggle to believe, and I could be proved really wrong here, but if they don't get the Carabao Cup final, some people think he'll get sacked.
Well, Ten Hag got sacked after winning the cup.
Yeah,
like
that
it's
doesn't
not.
make sense to me. You sack him when you think it's not going to work.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're not there yet. And there's a real possibility that they could give him more players and everyone comes back fit and they play like crap. That's when my mind might change, or you might be justifiable, in my opinion, to say sack him. But we're not there yet.
What is? Why do you want to bring Gold Coast United back? Yeah.
I don't know, just because, like, that's where I had some really important formative experiences in my life and career as well. Like, Gold Coast means, like, I went there last year for a mate's Bucks party, and I pretty quickly realised, like, man, it's not for you anymore, the Gold Coast. Like, but, like, I have just, like, nostalgic vibes about it. Like, that's where I learned to drink, really, you know what I mean? Like, it's where I grew up.
That's
And also-
that's beautiful, man.
But also, like,
Just like a Theo Von comment. That's where I learned to
That's
drink.
beautiful, man.
but like that's I saw the club as well, and Jake would know this, and more people don't. But like I saw, like I knew all the people, I understood the rhythms of the club, and like I put in like long hours, and I love the people, and that club could have been really special. I think it was for a brief period of time, and I think it got a tough sort of run in the end in terms of Clive jumping ship and just like the club being shut down. I thought the people of the Gold Coast got a rough deal there. Like the football community on the Gold Coast is strong and good.
It actually is, isn't it? There's
Bro,
like a few good Croatian clubs.
Do you know where it comes from? And like we've joked about it, but like we're seriously like, if we know how to make a bid, I think there's like conversations to be had because we know enough people in the game to look at it. But it's purely because the Gold Coast market underachieved what it actually was capable of. Like if you go to the Gold Coast, you drive everywhere, you see a soccer ground, you see a football pitch, and you see kids. And the first 2 seasons, Skilled Stadium was packed to the rafters with the top team. And then for whatever reason...
Was it packed like that?
They got crowds of like 7,000 to 8,000 initially.
It's better than most
which
clubs.
is pretty good.
But
Now-
when I went there, we didn't do one like community event. We didn't like engage with anything. We didn't even try.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean?
You didn't even have a fucking sponsor.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful part of the world, bro. So it's very easy to attract players to come and play in the Gold Coast.
yeah.
So there's a lot. There's a lot to like about it. It's just notoriously Gold Coast sporting teams don't.
It's the biggest part of Australasia at the moment that doesn't have a team. Like, there's a big population there. There's a good community that deserves a good club. It didn't work because fundamentally, it's yes, Clive, but also the amount of rent they had to pay at the Robina Stadium to have it open was such an amount that it wasn't feasible to have a soccer club there because you're not going to get enough people to meet that. The Titans barely get enough people to meet that, to clear that bar.
Yeah.
If that wasn't the case, if the government charged less for that venue, Clive wouldn't have brought in the crowd cap, which is the thing that turned off the community. And it might have been a chance.
What's the crowd club? What is it?
Halfway through the first season, So there's the way that the stadium is. There's 4 sides, right? But there's only one tier. Amy Park, when they want to cut costs,
Yes.
they close the top tier, and the bottom tier stays open. You can't do that at this stadium. So what he did to cut costs was to close 3 sides of the ground.
Everyone packed in.
Hence
Yeah.
why you never saw, when I played, you never saw people at the game.
And the way it was reported,
Because those 3 were...
the way it was reported was that he had capped attendances at 5,000, which was not strictly true. If 5,001 people turned up, you having the giggles.
Get it on him.
What are you?
No, I just find Clive hilarious.
It's pretty funny.
This is just the,
If 5,001 people turned up, the one person would have been able to get in.
Really?
But the way it was reported and the way it came across and the way it looked, to be fair, was that this billionaire guy is putting a cap on how many people can come to the game so that he can save money. And that turned everyone off.
What are we talking rent-wise?
Millionaire tight ass.
Tens of thousands.
For a game, 90 minutes.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Is there now a location where Gold Coast could play that is not Robina? Because obviously that's not.
No.
No, there isn't.
No.
But also,
Bro,
is there,
honestly,
is,
it's an amazing football stadium.
but is there also
Amazing.
a cultural issue with the just that part of the world, with like a sporting, an elite
It's like,
sporting
For
environment?
now, yeah, but if it got big, like it did sell out for a Premier League game once.
There is a little bit. Just, I don't think it's permanent. I think the city has changed a lot over 2 decades. But there's certainly, like, it just feels like the joint's cursed. But look at the Suns are. Like,
Yeah.
we were talking about this in the car as well. What's his name? Rao?
Oh, yeah, the number 1 draft pick.
The Gold Coast Suns
4 or
have been
5
terrible
years
for a
ago.
while. And so the AFL gave them draft concessions so that they could draft these 2 blokes, Roll and Anderson, who are best mates, Melbourne schoolboys, weapons. So the thinking was, if we put these 2 blokes there, they'll stay because they've been losing their best players.
Yeah.
And that'll fix the club because all the players who go there that are good want to leave because they're no good. It's a cycle. But apparently this Rao is talking to Geelong and other clubs here. And it's like, man, if he leaves,
It goes
it's
against
hard-
the whole philosophy of what they've tried to.
It's hard to be optimistic
away
that
from.
the Suns will ever have success.
Wow.
Like they just signed potentially like the future star of the game for like
so there
9.5
is-
years,
there is
so
a
that
little
the
bit
guy
of that.
can't leave.
Yeah, but is the Gold Coast culture, maybe as the people that live there, is it too laid back to be fanatical about sport?
Maybe.
Maybe.
But it's also a bit like we was talking about before with A-League players going overseas. It's a bit of a numbers game. Back then there were 6,000 people who were prepared to go to an A-League game. Now the population's certainly grown since I lived there and you live there.
Yep.
It's a lot bigger. There might be more people there now. That number might grow if you execute the club better. And ultimately, the only number that matters, as far as it pertains to Robina Stadium, is what are they charging for rent?
Yeah.
And can we meet that? If a scenario exists where they can clear that bar, then it doesn't matter what you say about a sporting graveyard or this or that. All that matters is the club becomes viable.
Yeah.
And let's just remember that at this point, Queensland football had 3 teams in the A-League. And they probably should have 3 teams in the A-League, given how big it is and how populated it is. And now they only have 1. And that 1 is like on the bottom of the ladder. So it's like very challenged from where it once was and where it probably can be. Which is the other driving message behind a team should be.
It's tough. It's tough because, yeah, North Queensland Fury, then you've got places like, Cairns and like it's...
My understanding is Queensland, the federation, is number 2 in the country for participants. It's actually more than Victoria.
Right.
So, and there's
huge place, bro.
There's some good players coming out of Queensland. Also, like Brisbane's about to have the Olympics in 2032.
Yep.
Like Brisbane, in my opinion, and you can extend this to all of Southeast Queensland a little bit, but like Brisbane's about to become, or should become, in my opinion, sort of like on par with Sydney and Melbourne. Like Brisbane's, Southeast Queensland is ready for a come up. The investment's there, stuff's happening there that could like allow that to happen. It's too big for one A-League club. The way that Southeast Queensland works geographically is that, again, half our car conversation is on this podcast. But like in Melbourne, if you wanted to carve it up for a few A-League teams, it's really difficult, right? Because you've got the western suburbs and then sort of everyone else. And Sydney's different. Sydney's got pockets. Southeast Queensland has pockets. You've got Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, Ipswich, and then you got all north as well. So in my opinion, if you had the right investors and the right setup, you could have a club potentially in all of those places. but probably you want 3 in Southeast Queensland or 3 in Queensland minimum for the amount of players and participants there are to try and turn them into football fans. And also, I spent many nights on the Gold Coast and in Brisbane going to bars, watching Premier League. Like, there's a big support for football there. It's huge.
Massive, yeah.
What would we're going to wrap soon, but I just want to again dig, because this is what I do, but any run-ins with players or coaches after what you've written? Any sour messages? Any that you can reveal? Don't have to say their name.
Good question. Not too much, really, to be honest. Surprisingly enough,
Oh, okay.
Can I have a
not
spin
too
on that?
much.
Yeah, spin on me.
What did you feel when you were watching, like, the year that I was there as a journalist? Like, did you have a point of view, like, how crazy it was, how ridiculous things were? Like, Mitch Cooper being captain on debut, me being vice captain. Like, you were there, right,
Yeah.
writing articles
I was
about
like
this stuff.
one of the 2 journos there that day. I still got the photo on my hard drive of you and Mitch and Miron. Remember, you know the photo I'm talking about,
Yeah,
right?
it's infamous.
That
Yeah.
might be the best trio in football.
Man, Miron's a legend too, by the way.
Yeah, like yeah.
Seriously, a wonderful person and one of the nicest people I've met in football.
Oh, I beg to differ.
Well, I was going to say, Jake, can't you not?
No, he's a unique character, man.
Yeah, no.
He is. He was a different guy. I just didn't think he knew what he was doing. That's all.
Yeah, look, you can say that as well, but I'm talking about overall the guy.
Yeah.
He was definitely out there for sure.
Yeah.
He had the banana formation, the wine glass formation,
To elevate my point.
had the lizard system.
The wine glass.
The lizard system. He meant to say,
But-
we're like a chameleon. We change depending on the opponent.
Is that really?
Oh,
But he
I
said-
thought it was the
System,
And we've
man.
just spoken about Ange,
the
who's
complete
like,
opposite
Yeah,
of
do you know what I mean?
That's
So,
what-
like, as a
the M1
player,
derby
you're
was
like,
piss
fucking,
funny,
what's
right?
going to happen today?
How good's the M1
Depends how
derby?
he wakes up, bro.
On one side, you got the best coach Australia's ever produced. On the other side, you got the lizard system.
Yeah.
Jake, you're trying to go into the game. What do you want me to do, man? You got to wait to see what the 6 is doing.
Yeah. But
Then you decide.
Yeah, well, man, the warm-ups, we were doing look-away passes because he liked how Robson did it. So, and as I said, I've come from the Australian Institute of Sport, bro, like where it's like, walking down the Mark Viduka walk, doing high-end training, and then we go there and it's like taking the piss.
Yeah.
But,
To answer your question,
yeah, please.
it was hard to know because, like, I was experiencing all this stuff for the first time as well. Like, I didn't have a baseline of normality to compare it to, really, in terms of what was happening at Gold Coast during the time that I was there, because it was all new to me and I was experiencing it as well. That press conference, I was like, well, this is weird. And then the next day when it turned out that Miron was getting sacked because he said it was ceremonial that Mitch was being made captain.
Oh, my God.
Remember that?
I forgot this.
Yeah.
Did he get sacked because of that?
He got suspended initially and then he got sacked.
Yes. So
It was so dumb.
this is how I'm going to be careful how I say this. Right? Oh my God! Now I remember everything. So finally, me and Mitch get a debut, which I feel was well and truly long overdue. But Miron just was coming at us, and then Clive pretty much said, "You got to start playing the kids," because like Miron's way was getting us to the bottom of the ladder.
Oh, Clive had pretty much decided after the second season that he was going to pull out of the club.
Yeah.
And that they were only offering 1-year contracts. So all the good players left, and basically the squad was made up of a couple who hung on: Michael Thwaite, Christian Rees,
Yeah,
Mossy.
Joel Porter,
Yeah. And,
Robson, and
and a bunch of kids, which made sense as well because they just won the NYL twice. So there were good kids ready to come through.
So we're winning the youth league. Sorry. Good. So yeah, we're winning the youth league, and we get into the press conference. Anyway, Clive Palmer wanted Mitch Cooper to be captain, and whatever. I was vice captain because I was the second youngest. So as part of this press conference, and Miron, like, pretty much, he didn't even say anything wrong, but he kind of said it like it was a ceremonial thing.
Like a gesture that Clive was making.
And
In terms
Clive,
of this
off
is the
that
direction
comment,
we're going to.
Off that comment, Clive sacked him.
Because I think they were falling out behind the scenes. You know what I mean?
Supposedly, right? Like that, allegedly, but that's what it was.
It was an excuse to do that because I think Clive was basically messing with the game at that point. He wanted out, so he was just doing.
He was just fucking around.
He was just doing zany shit.
So my first game and Mitch Cooper's first game.
You guys were all right too.
Yeah, we did well. We lost in that 81st minute. Ali Babel scored, but Mike Mulvey was the coach. So one coach I did the press conference with, a new coach for game one. And then I always say this story about Coops when I knew it was a pretty bad, like not a bad decision, but I was like, fuck. We walked down in the tunnel, walking out to Amy Park, and you see like Fred and Coops at the front. and the referee looks over to Coops. He's like, "How you feeling, mate?" He goes, "A bit nervous." And Coops goes, "Oh yeah, a little bit." He goes, "Oh, you forgot your shin pads." So Coops had to run back to the change room, get his shin pads. I'm like, we've already gone 1-0 down before we've walked out.
So good.
Yeah,
then-
we need to bring him back.
After that, it was crazy though. 2 weeks after that, felt like freedom of speech.
Yeah. Jerome loves this shit.
So we turn up at the game.
This is real
Gold Coast
shit.
United versus Melbourne Victory, and all the signs that were for their sponsor, the Hyatt Regency Coolum. Clive had a falling out with Hyatt. He just bought another hotel on the Sunshine Coast, replaced all the signage with the words freedom of speech. For
my God.
Is
no
Clive
real reason.
Palmer
I actually
the Trump of Australia?
as close as you can get, probably. I actually think he was doing that to have his license stripped because you can't,
genius.
you can't make political statements like on a jersey or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think he just thought of like the most innocuous political statement he could.
Do you remember who was the poster boy? Fucking for that.
Only because it's I've gone through the photos as well on Getty Images. The clearest photo of a player with the jersey where you can see the jersey
Fucking hell.
is him.
Because I was balanced.
And then after freedom of speech, man, he got the license taken off him, and Clive says he's going to start up his own league. Football ended up being called Football Australia,
Yeah.
which is what the FFA is now called.
He's a fucking genius.
I don't even know if we can talk about that, but like I know that there was conversations with players like about that.
Save,
like when
save
Vince
those
McMahon tried
conversations
to-
for the book.
Yeah.
It's like
I
when
just
Vince
don't end up
McMahon
in
tried
court,
to start his own. That's like when Vince McMahon tried to start his own NFL league, and he was trying to bring over players. Would you have gone, Jake, if the money was right?
What? No, I know players I know a few players that said yes,
To the CPPL,
but
Clive
I
Palmer
would
Premier League?
I wouldn't have gone. No.
Would you go back in time and take the money if you knew how your career would have unfolded otherwise?
I would not have accepted the offer to Gold Coast in the first place.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair.
Where would you have
That's where I
gone?
like to. I would have rather not played there than had
Really?
a club. Yeah.
Vinny, just on a bit more of a serious note, I know we're wrapping up soon, but you're one of the most, I'd say, credible people to speak on this and the position that Australian football is in currently.
I feel like a mad wanker, by the way, talking like about myself for so
Nah,
long. Anyway.
but you've done probably the most. You've probably done the
You're
most.
allowed to.
One of the most researched people that we've spoken to, at least. I saw an interview the other day with I think it was James Johnson, Simon Hill, someone else, and they were talking about how Annika Wells, the sports minister, was saying has been what's the word? Overt with saying that football comes from all different angles to the government to ask for funding, which is one of their issues from 7 different departments. Fragmented. If you had to summarise what is maybe like 3, 4, 5 things that need to change to set Australian football on a better path, how would you summarise it?
Big question, bro.
Yeah.
Big question. Would you blow up the state feds? Like if you were designing Australian football today,
Like literally?
yeah, I don't mean put bombs in
Oh,
the
okay,
offices.
yep.
I
Sorry.
mean, like, if you were sitting down today and you got a blank slate and you were going to design how the structure of Australian football would be, would you have a national body and then state bodies and then in some states under that, regional associations? Probably not. You'd probably look to get rid of one of those layers.
Yes, for sure.
I think there'd be a lot of synergies in terms of that. The game would just operate, but sometimes it feels like, and the A-League going independent didn't help it. Who's in charge of Australian football?
Nobody
How do you
knows.
answer that question?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many people, so many organisations, and they're not always on the same page, and there's people trying to protect their own lot and make decisions that are good for them, but might not necessarily be good for the whole of the game. So I would try to sort of shave off a little bit of that fat, so to speak, and make the game a little bit more organisationally integrated. Second thing I'd do is, I think I've tweeted about this, the number one piece of infrastructure that would change Australian football is Perry Park in Brisbane.
For sure.
I grew up in Adelaide. I grew up going to High Marsh, right? High Marsh is the freaking best place to watch football in Australia, just about. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I agree. And I've never even been there.
So good. So good. And I know Brisbane really well because I spent a lot of time there too. Brisbane should be seen like Adelaide in terms of the way football there is. It should be like that. The reason why we don't think of it like that is because we look at Brisbane Roar games and we see sometimes the same amount of people who are at High Marsh at Suncorp, but it feels crap because of 50,000 people. So if you were to literally copy and paste High Marsh and put it in Perry Park, which is not far from where I used to live in Brisbane as well, and like probably one of the most happening parts of Brisbane, the pocket, overnight, the way football would almost think about itself in the second most populous state, as I was mentioning earlier, would change very quickly. And a lot of things would change off the back of that, I think.
Well,
Really?
it looks brilliant for the women's games.
Oh, yeah.
It's packed.
Yeah, but the men the other night got 6,000 to
Yeah.
the game they played. If you put that, you couldn't fit that in Perry Park now.
Yeah.
So even at their lowest, the Roar are getting crowds that are too big for that place.
Yeah, yeah.
But the position, the access to public transport is so good that if you just put a High Marsh-like stadium there, the perception of football there would change because people would, you turn on a Brisbane Roar game and be like, oh, that's going off, even though it's the same amount of people. And then things change off the back of that. Football becomes more appealing for kids. Sponsors want to be involved. Broadcast looks better. So many little things flood off that. So I'd do that for sure.
That's a big one, isn't it? Like kids wanting to go because it seems like
Well, it's not cool.
It's not cool. It's
But
not cool.
Going to Adelaide United games when it's packed is cool.
Is cool. Yeah, and like even
Going to Victory games when Amy
to the
Park is
terrace
packed is cool.
is cool. Yes.
Going to Brisbane Roar games when there's 7,000 people at Suncorp Stadium
Yes.
is not cool.
Yes.
You feel like a loser.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'd do that. What else would I do? Bring back Gold Coast United?
Oh yeah,
Fun
I'm
dice.
not pissed. I'm genuinely got a fire in my belly for that.
Yeah, man.
You do too, don't
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Do you think
I've
like
got to be a journalist for a little bit longer, but then
yeah,
I'll
like I don't think the timing's right now, but I think there's merit for the league to grow. Like
can't-
we need more teams in the league, bro.
I can't die without having a crack at it.
Yeah, me too. All right, we're doing it.
And what about the structure of the A-League, APL, and Football Australia and this whole relationship?
I think it was probably a good thing that they separated so that each body could focus on its own thing. I just don't think the execution for the last few years has been good. Like, obviously, keep up all that. We don't need to go into that. So separation itself wasn't a mistake. I think what has happened is a mistake, and it's trying to be rectified. So I wouldn't change that. What else?
I think,
I
bro.
think there's some good points.
I think you've had an incredible. You've actually been around for a while, but you've been an incredible journalist, Vinny.
Thanks, bro.
And for where you're at now, man, it's a pretty big position. As you kind of said, you're the Bradbury, but I feel like it's good that your ability actually matches the Bradbury runs. So
Shit, we
helpful.
didn't even ask you about the difficulty of getting an article into the full article into the papers.
We actually got asked to specifically ask you that because there's obviously this viewpoint that from a journalism point of view, when you're working for these big papers, you may write an article, then someone may oversee it, and that may sort of change, and then it may not even see the light of day. Or how hard is it for our sport to see the light of day in these big papers?
Yeah, let me say it like this. There's no anti-A-League agenda, really, in the media. The media's
Bit
not...
of a myth, you reckon?
Yeah, look, for sure there's times when there's crowd behaviour, they'll sink the boot in, they've got an excuse, they've got a reason. But
Yeah.
that's different. I'm talking about why are there not more articles in the media about the A-League? Fundamentally, not enough people are reading them.
Yeah.
These days, they have all the metrics on everything. They know how many people read an article. They know how many people scrolled to the bottom and finished the article. They have stats on what kind of headlines will bring in people and what ones don't and all that. There's so much knowledge. And media companies are driven by one thing primarily, and that's profit. They would not do something that could bring them profit because they don't like the sport or whatever. If the audience is there, the media will go there. So fundamentally, that's why it's difficult to get A-League stories across the line because, again, there's not enough people like us who would read them and get into them.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you can't do no A-League stories. And a lot of it relates to just the strategy of where I work and all that, and I won't get into that. But, like, no one's told me you can't do it. It's more like, can you find the ones that work? And so every now and then come up stories or ideas that you have that could work. You know, like when Douglas Costa and Juan Mata signed, that worked.
Of course, yeah.
You know, derbies will work because people will read about that in Sydney. This thing that I'm going to do about like transfers and young players, I think could work because it's a really interesting, broad topic. I'm going to do something on this kid, not A-League, but at the Wollongong Wolves, they signed this Rafael Leao guy. You heard of him?
He's related to Rafael Leao.
I wish.
Yeah.
No, he's the Solomon Islands player.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's like the Messi of the Solomon Islands. He played the last 6 months of last year for
I love that shit.
for Adelaide City, and now he's going to Wollongong, and he's trying to become like the first Pacific player to really like crack it. There's an interesting yarn there for sure. You don't have to be a football fan to want to read about the Messi of the Solomon Islands is in Wollongong. What?
Do you know Henry Ferrodo? He was the Messi of the Solomon Islands beforehand.
Yeah. I know the name from the NSL.
Yeah, there'll be people saying Henry Ferrodo. So shout
Oh,
out
look
Henry
at Brian
Ferrodo.
Keltack.
Well, it's the same dude. Josh Smith, the coach from he's the head coach of the Solomon Islands national team now, actually. He's worked in Vanuatu, used to work for the Mariners. He's the guy who got Caltac to the Mariners, and he's now the head coach of the Solomon Islands national team. And he's basically trying to steer as many talented Solomon players as he can to NPL leagues in Australia.
Well, is that a thing? Like,
There's going to be like 7 Solomon Islanders in that SA NPL next season, and then Raphael Leai in Wollongong.
Is there a catchment area that Australia has been sleeping on because we are the biggest league in Oceania? Like,
Here's another one I'd do, Rash, another change. I'd give every A-League club an extra visa spot, but that player has to come from Oceania and not including New Zealand.
Yep.
So you can't just...
one of the islands.
Yeah, so you can't just go and sign Chris Wood as a loophole, but the strategy and the reason for that is that you go and find the talented players from these countries that don't get opportunities.
Fiji.
Nice.
Find projects.
You go and find Brian Keltax.
Yeah, I'd do that for sure. I don't know what difference that would make, but who knows?
I think it's a good connection.
Yeah, the reason they don't
build.
do it is because you can't burn one of 5 visa spots on a roll of the dice player who might not adjust to life in Australia, let alone football in Australia. But if you gave the free hit opportunity of a 6th visa spot, how many clubs would do it? Maybe half of them. And if you find one gem, imagine, say...
Roy Krishna.
Imagine American Samoa just goes off its head for the A-League because Western United signed the American Samoan Messi.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
That's true. It's a great point.
You've got a whole country. You've got a whole country following your team.
It's also good for football.
Yeah,
in terms of overall.
Vince
it's good for
Rugari,
them.
well done, bro.
Yeah,
just
but
fixed it.
it's helping
fixed
the
it all.
region.
You fixed the game. In fucking 4 points.
Can we
Perry
just-
Park and an extra visa spot.
timestamp this because I'm careful on it. So I don't know if it's we should keep it in. But one of the demographics that I feel is very under focused on in soccer is Aboriginal communities. Like, they seem to be the most, I guess, skillful players in the AFL from what I can see. But I don't see many of them playing soccer. Obviously, it's maybe a cultural thing and just because they don't enjoy it or whatever.
Tell you what,
But
do another spot in a squad. Like, look at the AFL and the way they work their Category A, Category B rookies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They have next gen development academies, indigenous academies and all that. Why couldn't an A-League team have a bonus squad spot, as in an additional player to whoever the squad is, however big the squad is, for an indigenous talent? Just the first time I'm thinking of it, but like...
Bro, I was.
Why couldn't that work?
I was fortunate to play with James Brown, who was the
baller.
best player on the Gold Coast when I was there, and he was indigenous.
Yeah.
So
James Brown.
don't tell me there's not talent. Do you know
We've
what I mean?
got 2 in the Gold Coast youth team that point to what we're talking about.
Correct.
Mitch Cooper from Vanuatu.
Yep.
James Brown, indigenous.
Yep.
I just
Both ballers.
Taj
was indigenous
Taj
too.
was indigenous too.
I just think it's a whole region that we could capitalize. Like Asia, it's all in sync, sort of. Their countries, they intertwine, they do transfers between. Obviously, these countries are small as fuck. But a lot of the other regions around the world sort of help each other out inadvertently with like, oh, your player moves from, I don't know, the Canadian Premier League to the MLS because they're too good or whatever. But you've got Papua New Guinea, you've got Fiji, you've got American Samoa, you've got all the Polynesian, Micronesian countries, even like Timor and stuff, like countries that are close by. The biggest league in terms of distance is the A-League. So maybe it could be
Another idea of approaching the same challenge. Back in the day, we're talking even before they expanded on the Gold Coast and all that. It never happened, but Frank Lowy was talking about, could we bring in a Pacific Islands team in the A-League?
I've heard this, yeah.
And I just wonder, OFC must have a lot of money. Our FIFA's got a lot of money. What's the best way to develop football in Oceania? I don't know, but I wonder if having a dedicated Pacifica team in the A-League could be it. It could be owned, just spitballing here, could be owned by the Confederation, the OFC, could be funded by FIFA in the interests of maybe that's the best way to promote football in that country is to have one professional team rather than trying to build up a team in Fiji, a team here, a team there. Because realistically, that's going to be really difficult.
Yeah.
What if we have like a hybrid team that's maybe based out of one of these countries and plays a game here and there every season?
Absolutely.
I
It's
think
filled only with these. Could that? I don't know.
I feel like Fiji could work because if Auckland's going to Perth, they can go to fucking Fiji on an away trip.
It would have to be subsidised by FIFA and the OFC.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's the only way it would work. Because
But
otherwise
that's very
it'd be
possible,
really
man.
expensive.
Oceania's got to. You're right. Where's all the money in Oceania?
I don't know, man.
Like, where's that sitting?
In a treasure chest somewhere. Anyway,
Shout out, Vinny.
Vinny, you're a legend. Thank you for coming down here,
Thanks,
man. I know
boys.
it's boiling hot
It's a
today.
buzz to be on, to be honest. So thank you very much.
You're a legend. Guys, go get Ange Ball. Available at all good bookstores and anywhere pretty much. It's fucking everywhere. Go get Ange Ball. Keep supporting Vinny and his articles. Thank you so much for coming down, man. Really
God bless.
appreciate it.
Thank you, boys. No worries.
Booters, like, comment, subscribe. 5 stars on Spotify. I want money.